Howdy, 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 everybody. I hope you've all had a great, wonderful weekend, or week and weekend, I guess it is. Um, Glad to be back on the live stream again today, and have I got a packed program for us today. I spent a lot of time this week working on the layout of the program and all the different things I wanted to cover. So, without further ado, I'm going to kind of go into a little bit of news and kind of cover some things that just like I do every week, just to kind of give you an idea of where the industry is. There was a lot going on in the industry this week. First of all, I want to remind everyone the end of the year tax credit is going to come to an end at the end of the year. So if you are looking for those projects to get them done, get that equipment, get it installed, and claim it on your taxes this year, because once it is gone, it doesn't look like it's coming back for the individuals. Now, that said, hopefully most of you have ordered what you want already, but the tax credit is pretty significant. I mean, we're talking about a 30% reduction in your taxes, and it isn't just a reduction in your income, it is a reduction in raw taxes. So it's pretty significant. So make sure you don't miss out on that. There are tons of links and codes and everything to follow in this live stream. I have it separated into a couple of different categories. I have scan codes for your phones. I have everything that you might be looking for to get to the content this week. So don't worry, we will cover everything. Second thing I wanted to do is make sure that you sign up for the email list. There's going to be some cool stuff coming in the next couple of months for those that are signed up for the email list. I know that we have a few that are already in the email list, but nowhere near the number of people that I would like to see. So I've got some, let's just say, some promotional products that might be coming the way to the email list, and the way that those are going out is going to be a random draw from the email list. So make sure you sign up for that. I also want to, let's see if I can pull this up here. I have a ton of requests from people about used solar panels. So I want to post a couple of links about used solar panels, and I will see if I can get them to sticky at the top. These two companies carry used solar panels all the time. If I can figure out how to get to them, let me see if I can put them over here and see if that will post. No. What in the world is going on? All right, so let me see how I can figure out how to get these things to post. Why can't I post in my own? Oh, I see. Whoops. All right, let's try this again. And all right. So it will not let me post URLs for some reason. So we will try this another way. Let me see if I can get you some of these links the other way. Oh, I see. It's just saying that it's too long. Okay, that's easily solved. Let me just post it in two little posts here. So the first one is Shop Solar Kits. They have got a really good selection of used panels. Now you have to pay attention. There's the first one there. And then there is a second company also called Santan Solar. Both of these links are affiliate links for me. They do help me out if you order from them. If you call them and order, I don't get the affiliate link. It only works if you order online. So I do appreciate everything that you guys do, all the orders that you guys have been making. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for using the links. I really do appreciate it. It helps me afford to pay for the different solar projects that we've got going on. And right now I have a ton of solar projects in progress. So I also want to make sure I encourage everyone to participate in the chat. Feel free to ask any question anytime. I love that. I have a packed program, so if you don't want to participate and you just want to listen, you're welcome to do that also. But this week I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. I want to get into a little bit of news coming out of RE Plus. For those of you that are not familiar, RE Plus is a convention that happens every year, and it actually has a few other conventions in different cities. It has Orlando here in a few months. It had this week, the annual big one is in Vegas, and there was a lot of cool new things coming out. I want to give a shout out to Country View Solar. He did a couple of reviews while he was there that were really in depth and covered some information that I think you guys would be interested in. The first one he did was EG4 is really truly going American made this year. It's going in 2026, I guess. They're going to have the first inverter that is going to be a high voltage. It's called the Nova High Voltage 100 volt system. They're going to create the battery, they're going to source the battery, and build the inverter in America, from what I can understand. This is a major step forward for us building our own products and home sourcing some of this information. So a shout out to EG4 for taking the first step and making that happen. They did start this step very long before a lot of the current events have happened, so good for them, and I'm glad to see it. I also heard that all of the Lux Power devices are going for EMP hardening for this coming year, the certification. So most of them already are EMP hardened, and some of them have certification, but from what I understand, all of the Lux devices are going. And again, this is all from Country View Solar, so again, thank you, Country View, for the feedback. EG4 has a new window unit, AC unit, that is dual powered coming out. So you know they've had the mini split for many years now. And you can hook up solar panels to power that during the day. And then if it doesn't have enough power, it can supplement with real power. Now they are coming out with an actual window unit that does the same thing. So in the window unit sticks out of the window like normal. In the back, there's just some MC4 connectors, and you can plug that directly into the power that way. And you can use electrical normal 110 power. It's a 1200 BTU unit. It looked like the release date was somewhere in mid-2026, but we'll look forward to that. That's going to be really cool. And it should be very beneficial for those of you who don't want to go through the trouble of installing even a mini split and running electrical for that. They are truly just window units with MC4 connectors on the back, so that would be cool. I haven't heard anything about its specs other than it's 1200 BTU, so it is a 1-ton unit. It will be, you know, a small one, but that's okay. That's really what I think most of the people that are looking for window units are looking for 1-ton units. The chargeverter is surprisingly going to get an upgrade. Now, the information on this was a lot less lacking, and I did see it from a couple of different sources. And I don't remember exactly, there was one where the EG4 rep was actually talking about it. And then Country View Solar also went over a quick view of it. I didn't get to make it to RE Plus this year, and I really, I feel like I missed something. So I will definitely be there next year, no questions asked. But the chargeverter is coming out, they're coming out with a chargeverter Plus. And the chargeverter Plus is going to have some extra controls in it. It sounded like it was the configurations that they were going to allow us to do. They were going to allow us to have a little bit more control over it, and the screens were updated. And like I said, they claimed, it was EG4 that was making this claim, that the feedback that they had got, they wanted to fulfill what we needed for that. I also heard that it was going to be IP65 rated, meaning that you can now add this to your outside of your house with your wall mount outside batteries and stuff. So that ought to be pretty cool also. So all of that is news coming from RE Plus about the EG4. Now let's get into some of the other ones, and this is still Country View Solar that did these other videos too. Solar Arc companies coming out with an inverter that is an 18K continuous power inverter. And what this means is that instead of having multiple to power 18K, you have a single unit that can power 18K, and I believe it said surge was up to 36K. That is 36 kilowatts. That is huge in the industry. Now, the way they're getting around this, in the past, the problem has been having the ability to get that much battery power to the inverter, knowing that, you know, you're talking about a significant amount of power there. I hear, and this is all rumored at this point, I don't have any evidence of it. I did see one of it looked like there was multiple battery connectors where you would be able to run multiple 4-aught cables to that inverter to supply enough battery power to do it. Now, obviously, you're going to need to have a large enough battery bank to be able to supply that power also. But the nice thing about this is this gets us out of the necessity of having to run things, multiple different inverters, and running them in parallel and dealing with getting connections that way and everything. This is a single unit that provides 18 kilowatts of power. If I remember correctly, and this one's from memory, I don't have it on my notes, and I do have notes today. So if you see me looking down, it's because I am reading my notes. I am not doing this all from memory. But one of the things that I did remember that I didn't put in my notes is I think he said that it had 28 kilowatts of available PV power. So you could, that is a lot of power that you can pump into the PV. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that goes over the next year with SolarArc. Also, they went to Bluetti, and for those of you that are RVers and looking for some enhancements to the solar industry for you, we're going to get a little bit too from Bluetti. This one, they're coming out with a new device that was called the RV5. Now, the RV5 Power Hub is kind of a whole ecosystem for the solar industry for RVs. It's got special chargers that can be hooked up to your car to allow it to charge off of your alternators. It's got two different voltages that it can handle. So now instead of us having to do an inverter for the 120 and deal with the battery backups in another way, you can now actually say you want to provide 12 volt power or 24 volt power or whatever to your automobile or your RV also. So that is a really cool thing, because that was one of the things that I've always told everyone when they're dealing with solar in an RV. For example, my fifth wheel, I have to deal with a 48 volt battery system. The RV runs on a 12 volt battery system, and the inverter is a 110 volt or 120 volt system. So you end up with multiple power sources. This is supposed to provide some kind of relief for that in this new ecosystem of devices that they have that all connect together. So that's kind of some really cool news and some things for us to look forward to. Most of it was 2026 stuff. There was nothing immediate that I saw. And so I'm looking forward to what other changes are going to come down the line. The one that's really that I thought was super interesting, looping back to where we started here, was the high voltage EG4 inverters with battery, all built and sourced, the batteries being sourced in America. That's going to be interesting to see where that leads and how that goes. So I have mixed feelings about high voltage batteries. I know we've talked about it briefly in a few of the previous live streams about high voltage batteries, and I'm not sure exactly how I feel about it. I know it's more efficient because the conversion isn't as much, but it also pulls it out of that DIY area into that higher voltage. That's when things start getting a little less convenience and safety-wise, get a little less convenient for the DIYer, and people get a little bit less less comfortable with it, I guess I should say. Because once you get over 100 volts, power is extremely hazardous to your health. Not that 48 volts wouldn't do it or 24 volts, but as you know, 12 volt batteries are a lot less dangerous than working with a wall outlet at 120 volts. And that's why the DIY market pretty much sticks to 48 volt and below, because there's a penetration of skin factor there. Not to say that they aren't dangerous, just saying that there is a huge difference in the voltage, the way the current flows in those higher volts. Moving on, so that's all kind of the new stuff that I've got. Today's show, I have just a packed program. I have 6 different categories of items. I kept sitting down, coming up with an idea of what was I going to do for this show, and there was just so many of them that I decided that I would just pick the best 6, the ones I had the most question about. So we're going to start off with the DIY solar versus solar generators and which one's right for you. I've got some bullet points on that. I'll talk about that. We'll go over the difference between DIY, building an actual solar system for yourself, and then using just a regular solar generator. The second category that I'm going to talk about today is the top solar mistakes that beginners always make. And here the idea is to tell you some of the things that I screwed up when I first started, and that I see quite commonly most newbies in the industry, just from lack of knowledge at that point, they make these type of mistakes. And some of these are very expensive and very costly, but very easy to prevent once you hear them and know them. So we'll go through some of those, and I'll give you some real life experience of some of the stupid things that I did when I started, that now I look back and think, oh man, how could I have ever dreamed of doing that? But that's just the way it is. It happens to us all. or if it doesn't happen to you, it's because you've got somebody who's stopping it from happening. So hopefully I can give you a little bit of benefit of my mistakes. The third category I want to talk to is how many solar panels do you really need? This is a very common question with people. They go out, they think they're going to buy 2 solar panels or 4 solar panels or whatever, and they have no idea how that really equates back to what are the usage that they have in their house. Some of them have gone through the trouble of doing the full house audit. They know exactly how much power they need, but they underestimate or they don't correctly estimate what the solar panel output's going to be. I'll give you a couple of quick formulas that you can use that just off the top of your head you can say, okay, I need about this much power to handle that, and then from there you can break that down into solar panels and use it there. So hopefully I can help you with get an idea there just based on the few items that I've done and save you a little bit of time. The fourth item that I want to go over is, are solar generators even worth it in 2025? They're exploding all over the market at this point. Some of them are super expensive and some of them are very deceitful of what they're doing. So we'll go into some of the details behind what I think of the market, what I think which ones and why I think some are worth it and some are not worth it, and what some of the things to look out for. The fifth one that I want to talk about is solar for emergencies. Being here in Florida, the top of mind for me always this time of year is every hurricane. You stop and you look out the window and you say, okay, is that one coming here? Now, 9 times out of 10, it's not coming here. But I can tell you from last year living through one where I had the power outage and I had the ability to do the solar and to get away from it. Had it not been for the little solar that I did have outside of my RV, because I left my RV in a spot, then I would have been in big trouble. So let me go into the things that you really truly need to have, and then you can go from there. You can determine how much bigger you want to go and how you want to handle it, because there's some things that are very essential that you want to deal with, and then other things that are nice to haves and you don't necessarily need to do it. And then the last one I want to do is, if I was to rebuild my solar system today, right now, what would I do different? What are the things that I would change, and what are the things that I don't feel like I should have done them the way that I did them, but having the knowledge that I have now, I couldn't have known that then. So I'll go over those. So those are the 6 topics, and I do encourage anyone at any time to just send out any message that you have. I've got a pretty good layout and structure for them. I've got some intro feedback, I've got some content for each one of them, and then I got some summary information. I took tons of notes this week and really came prepared instead of just talking off the top of my head. So, but I have no problem stopping and answering questions for you if you have specific questions to that subject, or if you have questions for other things other than that subject. And if I do pause and don't answer some of your questions right away, it may be just because I don't feel that that's the right spot to answer them, but I will get to all of the questions today. So I want to start off with DIY solar versus solar generators, and which one's right for you. In this category, everyone's asking, should I build a system myself, or should I just buy one of those all-in-one generators? Now, I'm not particularly fond of the solar generator terminology. Generator implies that it actually generates the power, and it really doesn't. It's just a solar bank. Battery bank really would have been a better term for it. But the industry is termed them that way, and my suspicion is probably so they could sell them, so we're going to use it. So solar generator is basically a solar system in a box short of the panels. A DIY system is what you would put together the components to build all of that. Now, there is variations of both of them, and fortunately the industry is coming out with some things. Now, let me just start with I've got a code for each one of these. Let me just see if I can turn this on. You should be able to see it now. This is a scan code that will take you to the to a web page, and let me just make sure that that scan code is working. I don't see it yet. There it goes. All right, so this is a scan code that will take you to a web page that has all of the links that are pertinent to this particular subject. They are all on there, and there is, if you go to on that website, that is my website, it also has a ton of information about all the other content that's going on. But if you look at the, and I think I can actually show this too, maybe. So if you look at the first one that I just sent out, it's basically just a link of all the different kits, all the different parts for like the solar shed and all the different generators and stuff that I've worked with or that I feel are important to discuss and talk about. So I'm going to go into and I'll break down some of the pros and cons of these systems and what the real world cost of doing one or the savings to doing the other might be. And so we'll just kind of cut through all the promotional crapola and junk like that, and I want to really get into more of the why would you do this as opposed to that, because sometimes the right thing to do is a solar generator, and sometimes the right thing to do is a DIY, and sometimes a mix of the two is the best. So I'm going to get right into it here. Define what a solar generator versus a DIY system. There's really is a true clear difference here. As I said before, the DIY solar system truly is where you take the charge controller, the inverter, the batteries, the solar panels, and you put together the system and you put connect all the wires. Now, there's some variations of that where you have the all-in-ones that they may combine the charge controller and the inverter into a single unit. And then when you get all the way to the other extreme, at some point in this migration, you get to the point where you have the battery built in, the charge controller built in, the inverter built in, but the flexibility goes away with the solar generator. Usually you're very limited in what you can upgrade. Some of the units may have additional battery packs that you can add to them, but they don't really allow you to increase the inverter power unless it's a rare one that allows you to may run in parallel one or two of them. But that's really the core difference here. The DIY system is something that should be flexible enough to grow with you, where you can start off. I did a consultation this morning where I was talking to someone about starting off with a single or maybe even double batteries and then growing into the 30 or 40 kilowatts that was needed to get to the very end of the cycle. But the ability to grow simply when he had been looking at a lot of the solar generators was really an important factor on that. And so that's why I kind of drew that out. Price comparison for the two is going to be huge here. So, and what I mean by that is that what I mean by that is the price difference from a solar generator compared to a DIY is usually pretty dramatic. And what they're charging you for on those solar generators is they're charging you to put all that together, to hook all those up, to carry the warranty and everything. So if you want something that is very simple and easy, then a solar generator, for example, if you've got an RV and you're a weekend warrior and you go away for, a weekend once everything and you spend the days out hiking and all of that, and you just want a little bit of power at night to read, to maybe even use a microwave to cook for a few minutes or make some coffee in the morning, but for the most part you're not going to be around, so you don't really need a full-fledged off-grid system, but you need some power to run the basic things and to use the lights and maybe even the water pump in your RV. A solar generator is probably the direction you would want to go to, and that would be because it's very simple, it's portable, and it also can double as an emergency device, meaning that when things go wrong, like later on when we talk about hurricanes and what are the necessities, you may be able to use that same solar generator to run your refrigerator or another device like that that you, CPAP machine, cooler. I know I've got this really cool portable refrigerator that I can use, that I use when I'm traveling and out camping. That's wonderful because you can keep your fish cold and stuff like that. So that's that. But the price comparison is what's going to be the giveaway there. They're going to charge you more to put that together for you and to manage that for you and to give you a ready-made system that's done. You basically, the only real mystery that could be involved there is the solar panels, and a lot of them are even locked into what you buy. The system you buy is very limited in the type of solar panels and what you can do, whereas on a DIY system you have exactly the opposite. All of that is left up to you. How many panels you need, the orientation that they're set up, the type of panels, the voltage of the panels, the wattage of the panels, how many of them you have, if you have 1 string, 2 strings, 5 strings, that's up to you because you incorporate the equipment that goes with it. You may have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 charge controllers as opposed to 1 that's built into a solar generator. So that is really the difference here, that when we try to separate between the two, if you're looking for an off-the-shelf solution, solar generator is the way. There's a lot of great links in that QR code that you can use to get a good solar generator. On the other side, if you like the DIY thing, if you like to build the system, you can build one with like an all-in-one where you're not necessarily doing, for example, I like building the DIY batteries. I like putting all the cells together, connecting them all together. That is way down at the other end of the extreme, because you're breaking the batteries into individual cells and running all the wires and the connectors for them and managing the BMSs and managing all the connections between them and everything. That is one way extreme. There's a happy medium in the middle where you can buy pre-made batteries, you can buy battery kits, you can buy battery cells and the components to put the battery together. So DIY has a wide range of content that allows you to do as much as you're comfortable with, or that's a really good way of putting it, to do as much as you're comfortable with without totally getting outside of your comfort zone and out into a danger zone, and then still refer to other people that can give you help or advice and stuff like that. So that is really truly the difference there. Portability versus performance is another big key difference between the two. And what I mean by that is a solar generator, those things are light. You can pick them up, and if I can see the picture of this one I've got here. So you can see this solar generator over there on the right-hand side of the screen. And those things, some of them are tiny. So depending upon what you want to do with them, you can easily pick them up and head out and in an emergency, use them for keeping your CPAP machine running or keeping a refrigerator running. You can also use them for a week away when you go fishing to keep an ice chest cooler and stuff. So that portability is unmatched by a DIY system. Now, I say that there are a lot of cool projects out, and I've got one coming up also, where people are taking and building portable DIY solar generators and getting some of the benefits of the DIY side and some of the benefits of the portable generator side. The portable generator side being more expensive, and so they're dragging those costs back over here, and then you build them with the DIY parts, but in a method that you can take it with you, can portable. And all of us have probably seen the Dolly version where you put the big inverter and a giant battery underneath it, and boom, you have this all-in-one there with, a 3,000 or 6,000 watt inverter that's portable that you can just roll around. So all of us have seen those type of things and know that those will work. Expandability. The expandability leans very much to the DIY side of things. With the DIY side of things, you can expand the amount of battery banks, you can expand the amount of charge controllers, you can expand the amount of inverters, you can expand the amount. The ability to expand the DIY one is part of it. And especially if you have the foresight to know that you're going to need to go this direction in the future, then you will be able to really be prepared for that expansion and have it laid out for you when you get there. One of the things that I did on this is when I bought my system for my RV, I knew that eventually I would get tired of traveling in the RV and I would move into a house. And when I did, I wanted an inverter that I could transfer to the house, and I wanted batteries that I could transfer to the house. But in addition to that, I can also add second inverter of the same thing, go in parallel, and have more than enough power to run a whole house as opposed to just running an RV. So expandability definitely goes to the DIY side of things. Some of the solar generators do have the ability to be expanded, but most of them are limited to additional battery banks where you pay a premium for them to have a plug-in of, going from 2 kilowatt hours of energy to 5 kilowatts, or from 5 to 10 or something along those lines. But you pay a premium for them because they are purchased set boxes that you just plug in. And most of us have seen those where the Bluettis and stuff where they just stack up and they just get taller and taller and they get bigger and bigger. Not to say there's anything wrong with that. When that's what you need, that's what works. There is a bit of a learning curve difference between one and the other. If you're not the type of person who likes to tinker and to play with things and build stuff yourself and you get frustrated easy, DIY solar is probably not for you because it isn't a plug and a play and you walk away from it and you're done. This is a very common misconception. Most solar systems aren't. Even the purchased ones, a lot of them are going to be from the manufacturers where they install them for you and they give you a warranty and they monitor it and they come out and repair it and fix it and things like that. So there is a learning curve for learning how to do wiring, how to do safety, how the setup time is completely different as opposed to just plugging it in and walking away, where that's true with some of the solar generators. Is you can, especially if you're looking like for an RV one, you can buy a solar generator that has a 30 amp plug on it and you can plug it into your RV and walk in and have lights and the basic concept of power to limit it to that generator instantly without any effort other than purchasing it and plugging it in and making sure that it's charged. So the learning curve definitely exists on the DIY side of things, but most of the people that are doing the DIY side of things like that aspect of it. Looking at reliability, what happens when something breaks? DIY is repairable. You can get in there, you can fix it. The charge controller goes out, a battery wire starts to act up, a solar panel burns out, whatever the case may be, any of those scenarios, because you built it, you're familiar with it, you understand it, and they're always repairable, usually down to, in some cases, if you've even built the battery, down to a bad cell within the battery. The generator, you return it to the manufacturer. It's no different than buying a TV in modern days. You just don't repair them anymore. And if you do, the warranties drop. The whole thing is up in hands. They're difficult to get into. They're sealed. They're made to where they're made to not have that happen. The quality has gotten really good on some of them, so you may not have to worry about it as much. But that one really depends on how much you like to manage those type of things yourself. Personally, I like having that control. I like doing it. There are times though when I'm out and let's say, if I go fishing and I want to just go fishing and I don't want to worry about it, I want that solar generator where I can just plug in the cooler and drop my fish in there and freeze them and don't worry about it, and I can take my time fishing and not have to worry about it. So there are some things like that where you can keep your bait in there, you can keep your dinner in there, your sandwiches, that the solar generator really truly is the easiest and best solution. So sometimes it's not a one-size-fits-all. The battery life cycles and chemistry, pay very close attention to this on the on a lot of the solar generators. A lot of the solar generators, when they first came out, there was such a boom of them, they created them with some really inexpensive lead acid batteries and other types of batteries that aren't Life Power 4 batteries, meaning they're not going to have a very long lifespan. They're going to be here for a couple of years and they're going to die on you. You cannot cycle them like you do a Life Power battery. They're not going to get the 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 cycles out of them where you can use them every day. So pay very close attention when you get into that. Let's talk a little bit about safety. Safety is a key factor with the DIY. You are responsible for a lot of the safety. You need to take special measures to understand what that safety is and how it would work, and what are the different, what are the off-on switches, what are the breakers, what are the fuses, what are all those things, how do they work, and how are you going to manage them? In addition to that, you need to make sure that you're managing the BMSs that protect the batteries. When you buy a solar generator, all those safety features are usually built in. If it gets hot, it shuts down. If it gets, if the battery goes too low, it turns off. These are the type of things that you configure when you build it yourself. So if that's not the type of thing that you want to do, then it won't be one of those things that I would suggest you do. Now, on the other extreme of that, if that is the type of thing you like, for example, I like the home automation industry and I like that. You can link all your solar into that. I can have hot water heaters turn on when I get a certain amount of power based on my solar system. I can have, all of this can happen that can't happen when you're just working with a little solar generator. Usually though, if your solar generator goals are different than it would be if you're building a DIY system. So the first thing you need to determine is really what are you trying to accomplish with it and how much power do you need to make that happen. The best system for you, this is where it comes down to, it really depends on what you want to do with it. My suggestion is if you're looking to power a house, to power a fixed cabin, something along those lines, then you are going to need a real solar system and not just a Bluetti sitting over in the corner. If you were looking for a weekend, weekend out here and there, you take your RV for a trip on the weekend, or you take your van across country and so on and so forth, then you might be okay with a solar generator. It comes down to if you're using it every day, solidly every day, and depending on how much power you need, that's where you'd come in. And so that's really what it is. There is no one size fits all. The bottom line here is the DIY gives you the flexibility of building the system as big as you want, as small as you want, growing, expanding, starting off small, adding what you want, upgrading components and changing things. The solar generator gives you the convenience of plug and play. You just plug the device in and walk away and you're done. So that's kind of the bottom line between the two. If you're just starting out, a solar generator might be a really easy way for you to have a backup plan for if a hurricane or a storm or a power outage and you want to make sure your refrigerator runs. You can buy a solar generator that easily runs a refrigerator and you don't have to worry about it. And if that's what your goal is, then that's the easiest way out. And then you can also have it for other items and other, weekends when you go take the kids for the baseball game or whatnot. You have a nice charger where you can have it for your phones and all that kind of stuff, or the camping trip or whatever other things that you need. But if you're building a long-term, want it to scale, then DIY is going to be better. If you're looking at trying to shave off your electric bill and eventually get completely away from the electric company in your house, going with a solar generator isn't going to do it. You're not going to have the expandability or flexibility that you need. In that case, you're going to want to go with building a DIY system. Take the time and understand your uses and needs and plan for that expandability. The expandability is the really key here with the DIY system. I've linked, as I showed you before, and I'll put it up on the screen again here. This QR code takes you to a web page. I think I can show it to you. Yes, I can. It basically takes you to this web page here with links for all of the DIY pieces, generators, the DIY kits, and even parts and stuff for what's used in the solar shed, if that's what you're looking for there. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to put them in the comments down below or send me an email. I'll be glad to answer them. And make sure that you subscribe to the email list, because we're going to have some giveaways here over the next couple of months. And we'll have some more content like this coming up on comparing some of these different items and stuff. So that really concludes the first subject on solar generators versus DIY solar. Hopefully that helps you out. And I'm going to move on, unless I have some other questions, I'm going to move on to the second subject. And that is going to be, and I got to have a little drink here. I'm going to get rid of this QR code. And I'm going to bring up the second QR code. And this one goes into talking about the top 5 solar mistakes, or the top mistakes that beginners always make. I started off doing the top 5, and I may have stretched it a little bit and gone over a little bit. So solar is super exciting when you first get involved with it. And there's some mistakes that most of us make, and I'm going to admittedly say there's several that I made. Most of these are things I did wrong that I've learned over the years that most other people also do. They're not uncommon. It's nothing to be ashamed about. It happens. You get into something, you get in a hurry, and you do things hastily, and then you find out after you've tried it, or you hear later that what you're doing isn't either safe, it isn't right, or it's wrong. The ones that aren't safe are the ones that are really concerning, and those are going to be some of the ones that I will really focus on and try to drive home for you so that you understand the importance of them. It's one thing to buy something, have it not work, and you have to buy another one. It's another thing to buy something and have it cause a fire or cause you real problems. So that's what we want to avoid. When I started, I made a lot of mistakes, and I'm going to talk about several of them here today. The problem with mistakes is that a lot of people try not to talk about them, and they try not to expose the ones that they've made, and then other people can't learn from them. So I'm going to expose myself a little bit and show you some of this, tell you some of the things that I've done that were some of them that were dangerous, and some of them were just downright funny. I can even remember one of them, my wife just point blank laughing at me and saying, just fix it and move on. Okay, so the goal here for this one is to save you a little bit of time, a little bit of money, and a lot of frustration, because there was one that just frustrated me so bad. Let's talk about the first one, though, is undersizing the system compared to actual energy needs. It's really important that you understand your energy needs and how much power you really need, and understand how that relates to how much you can realistically collect. And I'm going to give you a really simple rule of thumb that I gave to someone else earlier today in a consultation, that if you've got, let's say, 1,000 watts of solar panels, you can pretty much count that the best you're ever going to get is 5 to 6 times that in power coming in. No matter where you live, you're not going to get a whole lot more than that. Now, 5 to 6 means that you're going to get between 5 and 6 kilowatt hours of energy collection a day. Now, if you're using that energy while you're collecting it, and let's say you have an air conditioner running, you may not actually get to store but a third of that or half of that. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. The first thing you want to do is, when you're sizing a system, is understand that the solar panel size is based on their best peak performance. Where you live will have the ability to, and we'll get into a little bit later, a website where you can go and you can say, here's the size of solar panels I need, and for your area it'll give you an idea of how much it is. But you're trying to create enough energy that you can store it so that later you can use it on a rainy day. It's kind of a funny way of putting it, but I think the statement should have been created from the solar industry. So underestimating how much actual energy you need and underestimating what all that energy is being used for. So for example, if you've got 1,000 watts of power coming in and it says that you're going to generate 5 times that to the day, so you're going to have 5 kilowatts of energy generated. The problem is what most people don't realize is that the inverter itself, in order to bring that energy in and to store it in your battery, there's some usage or some leakage of it. In other words, to run the electronics that take it from the solar panels, that convert it to the right voltage, being your charge controller, and then to store it into the batteries, are not 100% efficient. It's not a matter of you pour a gallon of water out of a bucket and you get a gallon of water in the bucket at the bottom. It's a matter of pouring a gallon of water from 100 feet up and how much of it make it to the bucket at the bottom then. Not all of it. Now, the efficiency has gotten much better, but understanding that there are losses with every time you convert this power can give you an idea that 1,000 watts of panels, on the best day you're going to generate 5 kilowatts. On the best day, only 4.5 of that's going to go into your batteries. And I'm not using actual math here. I'm demonstrating what I mean by it. So please don't hold me to say, well, the percentages don't work. The theory works. The percentages may not be precise. So there may be like a 10% loss in that power, meaning that instead of 5 kilowatts you have go in, only 4.5 kilowatts go into the battery. But now when you take that power out of the battery and convert it to AC power again, there's another loss, and you may only be able to get out of it 3.9 kilowatts that gets generated and put into your AC outlets. So for 5 kilowatts of generation, you get the availability of only 3.9 kilowatt hours of energy. And so there's some losses there that everyone has to be aware of, that when you generate this power, it has to be stored, and that's where the storage, the moving it to the storage and taking out of the storage, has a cost for all the electronics in the middle to do all the conversions and transfers and moving over. That's kind of the easiest way to look at it. And every one of them have a little piece of loss here and loss there that you have to take into account. Underestimate or overestimating how much panels produce is probably the biggest problem that I have seen. Somebody says, well, I got 1,000 watts of panels and I'm going to generate, for 6 hours a day, I'm going to get 6 kilowatts a day. And chances are that's not what's going to happen. If you've got 1,000 watts of power and you've got 6 hours of good daylight, then those panels are going to start generating a little at the day, and there's going to be a peak where they generate that amount, and then it's going to start to drop off again at the other side. So there's going to be a curve of you generate nothing over here, and it's as the sun comes up, it starts to go up, and then it peaks in the middle of the day. For example, here and I can show you, maybe I can even show you and demonstrate that to you, because it's a really important concept. I can use my home assistant. Let's see, RV dot, there we go. That should do it. That did it. Okay, let me see if I can switch this over so I can show you. So if we look at the solar generated, and you can see in this chart over here, power usage. Let's see if I've got one that just shows me power generated. Let's do PV, and let's do total PV. This amps maybe? There we go. So here is the amps that are generated throughout the day from a solar system. And as you can see, as the sun comes up in the morning, you're only generating a little bit of power. And this might be a better demonstration if I showed it to you in watts as opposed to maybe this one. There we go. That's the same thing, only this is in watts. So this is direct correlation to the power of your solar panels. So as you generate, you can see as the sun starts to come up in the morning, the solar generation is very small, and it gradually builds to the peak of the day here around right now it's 1:15, 1:16 in the afternoon for me. And then it starts to go back down all the way to the end of the day. So I may have solar power being generated from, a few minutes till 7 in the morning till almost 8 o'clock at night, being 13 hours, but I certainly aren't getting the 3,700 watts off of this that technically I would be getting from 13 hours of solar generation. So that is one of the biggest key mistakes that people don't understand, is that the best you're going to get is 4 to 5 times your solar panels. The most likely you're going to get is between 2 to 4 times. And so if you look at what I've got here, and we could just take this and say, okay, what am I generating in a single day? And I generated 19.7 kilowatts. I have actually I have both sets of panels here. So I got 16 generated off of the roof of the RV. There's 3,700 watts of panels on the roof of the RV. So let's see what formula that actually comes out to. So if I said I got 16.13 divided by 3.7 kilowatts of power, I got 4.3 times my solar panels generation. Now, you can get better if you have your panels in a perfect spot and the sun's shining on them, you have exactly the right angle, and you can get a whole lot better. These panels are mounted on the roof of an RV, so they're flat. I'm not taking into account, the right angle and all of that kind of stuff. So please don't take this to mean that you can't get more than this. You certainly can. I'm just saying this is one of the largest misunderstandings that exist in building a system. Okay, so let's get back to the next piece of this. Buying cheap batteries that don't last. A lot of the times in the past, this was people buying lead acid batteries and things like that. They would make mistakes and it'd kill the batteries. There still are a lot of cheap batteries out on the market. If you're going to spend a lot of money on a solar system, please use some of the links that we've provided, that I've provided in the QR code, and look at the batteries that are there. Get a battery that's reputable. Some of these companies are producing batteries that simply don't have the right wiring in them. They aren't safe. The cells are cheap. They die quickly, and so on and so forth. On the good batteries, some of these batteries are going to be here long after we're gone. I mean, we're talking, 10,000 cycles on a battery that you cycle once a day is over 20 years of life expectancy on good batteries. So don't cheap out on the one thing that really is going to have the longest benefits for you. But at the same time, don't just throw your money at the most expensive, because that's not necessarily the best thing either. Batteries change from month to month. Just since I've been in the industry the last year or two, the companies that are producing batteries that were king 2 years ago, let's talk about some of those companies just had the massive Battleborn batteries, for example. They were just like king back 2-3 years ago. And now they're some of the most expensive batteries in the market. Are they good? Sure, they're good, but they're nothing compared to the stuff that's out on the market today for a tenth of the half of the price, or maybe even less than half of the price. So moving on. Mixing older battery types with newer battery types. Obviously, you want the same chemistry within your battery types. That's common mistake. If somebody says, well, I got some lead acid batteries and I want to buy some LiFePod batteries. You really should stick with the same. There are some types that you can mix if you know what you're doing. Just make sure you get good advice and that you're very careful doing it right. You can limit the available battery strength of the more valuable battery by doing this. At the same time, you can also extend the life of your current batteries by doing it. So there are benefits and downsides, but that's a common mistake. Using undersized wire. So using undersized wire can have multiple hazards. First of all, you can have some serious voltage drop, which basically means that you're going to lose a percentage of all of your battery voltage, and that goes back to that percentage that we talked about earlier before. If it's 90% efficient, but you have a 2-volt drop in a 12-volt battery because you used the wrong size wire, that could cost you another 15% of your battery efficiency, just poof, gone just like that because of the wrong battery size. In addition to that, it can generate a lot of heat, and it can be a safety hazard if it's really undersized, where it gets too hot and burns up. So please just be careful with the undersizing your wire. Make sure you understand the right size wire to do. That's one of the things that doing it. In addition to wiring, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background on this. I made a colossal mistake when I was hooking up my system. I ordered some wire off of Amazon, and a lot of the wording out there, these companies know that, you know, we're newbies, we don't know what we're doing, and I ordered the first the first copper wire I saw. It came in, and I looked at it and I said, okay, that's great. And then I went to install it, and then I had someone online tell me that's not the right wire. And I started looking at it, and it said copper clad aluminum wire, but the aluminum part of it was in small print and kind of hidden in the ad. The title just said copper wiring. Aluminum and copper wiring are not even close to the same. What makes matters worse is I turned around then after doing that and ordered it a second time, but with copper the wrong size. So I had to replace the wiring to my batteries 3 times before I got it right. This is something that was just extremely frustrating to me, because the word play on some of these items was intentionally designed to get me, being a newbie, and to cause me to order the wrong thing. And it wouldn't be so bad if it had just been the case of the money, but it was a case of it also wasn't safe. And for those of you who've watched the Solar Shed series, during part 2 of the Solar Shed series, there was a piece of that I replaced because I had reused one of those aluminum clad wires in a spot where I thought it might be big enough to handle it, and even for that system it wasn't big enough to handle it, and I had to replace it with a new copper wire. So wiring is easily probably the most dangerous piece to be wrong and to make a mistake. You want to make sure that you check all of them and all of your connections, all of your lugs and everything afterwards. So that's a really common mistake. Choosing the wrong charge controller. There are a lot of charge controllers out on the internet. There's a couple even on Amazon where the name of the company is MPPT, but the charge controller is PWM. But you have to go into the fine print to actually find that. So be very careful of the charge controller and understanding the difference between PWM and MPPT. And if you're not sure of that, then there's a video that I've got on the difference and how the two work. I'll link it here when we're not on a live stream. I'll go back and I'll link it for you. If you're here in the live stream, you can just go back through my history and you can find it over there. But it'll explain the difference in the two and why you would want the MPPT as opposed to the PWM. Forgetting about inverter surge is really thing. People see this inverter is 2,000 watts and they think, okay, well, my refrigerator only runs at 900 watts, or my refrigerator only runs at 400 watts. I'm fine, everything will be great. I can tell you from experience, refrigerators sometimes surge 10 times their actual running wattage. I've got a little freezer that runs in my wife's coffee trailer that's a 93 watts when it's running, but it surges to 984 watts in order to start. So understanding what those surges are. Air conditioners are bad, freezers are bad, refrigerators are bad, all of them are bad. Even a little portable refrigerator. When the hurricane hit last year, I had a little portable refrigerator and I was trying to put it onto a little 300 watt inverter because the darn thing ran at like 28 watts or something like that. But the problem was I couldn't get it started with the inverter, the little inverter that I had for a 12 volt system. So I ended up not being able to use that refrigerator at all because I had no way to get enough surge to get that refrigerator to run. So be very cautious of that. It's very common when you, especially if you have multiple devices that are surging on at the same time. Example of that would be, especially in home air conditioners, where you'll have the fan on the inside, and a lot of those are now configured where the fan comes on and then a few minutes later the air conditioner kicks on, or the air conditioner outside unit kicks on and then a few minutes later the inside unit kicks on. But some of the older ones still have them both boom hit at the same time, and thus causing you some definite problems there. Not grounding or bonding incorrectly. This is a subject matter that I really don't like whatsoever. Grounding is a way to prevent you from being electrocuted. It gives the power an alternate route to going through you to get where it wants to go. That is what grounding is for. It is really super important, because if it's not there, it will travel through you, and at the voltages that you're playing with here, it is the harm that this can do to your system is dramatic. You need to have a real respect for properly grounding things. Bonding is another story. Bonding the negative and the ground together should happen at the first junction box after the grid. So the grid comes into the house. If it goes into a panel, that's where the negative and the ground should be bonded, and nowhere else. The idea is that grounding wire that comes from whatever device, when something goes wrong, it needs a completely independent path all the way back to that box, and not the negative wire that is already there. So that's kind of what the big difference is between the two of them. You want the bond at the first place where the grid comes in. You want the ground to be completely and totally isolated from the negative, and if you run into some place where those two are crisscrossed all the way through, especially in old houses and stuff like that, it really is best that you get an electrician in there to work on them and make sure that that stays safe. Because grounding and bonding, the regulations have changed so much in the last 10 or 12 years to make things safer for us and to make us safer. GFI plugs and stuff like that, a lot of people take them out thinking that, oh, this is a pain in the butt, it keeps popping. The fact is, it's popping because electricity is going back the wrong way. It's getting away from it, and it's not all there. A GFI plug is basically an accounting procedure. If I send out 10 watts, I should get 10 watts of negative usage on this side. And if I don't have that double post accounting coming in, 10 watts goes out, 10 watts comes back, that's when the GFI pops. If you send out 10 watts and only 9 comes back, where did that extra watt go? With 1 watt, it may not matter. But 1 watt can also be an entire light socket of 60 watts, or at 120 volts that could kill someone. So a GFI plug is made to detect that inaccurate return flow and stop the circuit and say, hey, hold on a minute, this isn't safe. That way, if you do get a toaster in your bathtub, that electricity flows down through the pipes that are grounded from the house, flows out the wrong way, and therefore the GFI can detect it. And that's why the bonding is important to be back at the main panel, and that's why the grounding is important to exist and properly be set up, and that's why GFIs are really a good idea and there to protect you. Although I did have at the last, talk about frustrating, I did have a refrigerator. My primary refrigerator was brand new when the hurricane hit last year. I'd had it for about 2 months. And I'd never ran it off grid or anything like that. And as soon as the hurricane hit and we went to running off of a big power station box that I have, where it was plugged into a generator and everything, it kept popping the GFI plug. I mean, it was so frustrating because I had no other alternative but to run them through GFI plugs. The fact is there was a miswiring in that refrigerator that I never had known about and never would have known about until somebody got hurt. Eventually, at some point, somebody could have gotten hurt from it. But so GFI, grounding, and neutral bonding are very important, but understanding them is a very tricky subject, and it's not really one that a lot of people like to talk about. One of the common mistakes is you don't plan for maintenance or monitoring of the system. A DIY system requires maintenance. If you're not willing to do the maintenance, the DIY system is not there for you. There is no way around this. DIY systems have 1,000 little bitty parts. You've put them all together. It's no different than an automobile. You wouldn't dream of buying a car and not taking it in and getting it maintained, having the oil changed, having the tires checked, having the fluids done and everything. A DIY system is exactly the same. The difference is there is no auto dealer for you to drop it off at. That person is going to be you. And if it's not you and you're not willing to do it, you probably can't keep a DIY system safe. And I would advise you go with the off-the-box shelf solar generators and don't do a DIY system. Expecting the system to be a set and forget and not having to learn things and keep up with things is probably not going to happen either. You can do some of that, but for the most part, especially if you know somebody who can help you get one set up and help you learn to monitor it, that would be great. Yes, absolutely, cutie puppies. Give me just a second, and I'll be glad to go discuss that. And then we will. Expecting that a system to be set and forget is probably a bad thing. So let me kind of wrap this up, and then I'm going to get to this question that we have out there. If you are just starting out, avoiding these mistakes can probably save you a lot of frustration. Making sure you have good quality wire that someone that you know is presented. There's links in my descriptions for wire. I always put it out there, and I will put that QR code back up there also. You can buy good quality grade wire, making sure that first of all the temperature rating is of a good high rating. You know, you don't get the 45 degrees. Make sure you have the 70, the 80 degrees. I prefer the marine grade 105 degree temperature rating, and that it is pure copper. It can be tinned pure copper, meaning that it has a tin plate on it to protect it from water and moisture, like me, for that's marine grade. But it cannot be copper clad aluminum wire. Aluminum wire is not what you want for a system like this. The amperage ratings are completely different. Don't do anything to do with speaker wire, with radio wire, with car stereo wire. Any of those, a lot of those wires, a lot of them can claim that they can handle the amperage. It is not the same. I would love to hear if you've made some mistakes. Just put them in the comments for me. I'd love to hear what they are. If you're watching this on replay, please post them down below. I'd like to hear other people's mistakes. I don't like to be the only one that screwed things up, and I screwed up quite a bit during this. Most of my mistakes were things that just cost me a lot of money, rebuying things and buying the wrong stuff the first time. I got very lucky on some of the big items and had done a lot of homework and didn't mess them up. Scan the QR code on the screen. All the links are in there. There are some affiliates links in there, so I do make some money if you use the affiliate links. If you call the company and you get their advice and then you use the affiliate link, I still get paid. If you call the company and place the order with them on the phone, I get nothing. So that's not an issue for me. If that's what you need to do to get your order right, please do so. I just want to make sure you're aware of it. And don't forget to subscribe to the email list. It's in the links below also. It will allow you to be in drawings in the future that we plan to have. Now, I want to get to, let's see if I can turn on this chat, see if I can get this part to work this week. Hopefully that worked. Yeah, well, almost, huh? Yeah, let me see if I can get that centered correctly. YouTube message. Yeah, let's see. Gotta be. Oh, I see what I'm doing wrong. Yep. Let's go here. Let me see if I can get this fixed real quick. Give me just a second. I'll have this working lickety split here. I think that's got it. That's pretty close. Yeah. There we go. All right. So I got the alignment mostly working here. Let me just see if I can get this to show up on the screen correctly here. It's about as close as I can get. All right, so I'm just going to set that in. So here's the question. The question is can I talk a little bit about why DC power is so hard to interrupt at high amperage, and why specifically is a DC arc so hard to quench? So many, many years ago, and a lot of you probably watched some silly old movie, History of the World, Part 1, Part 2, I don't remember which one it was. And there was this humor going on about the battle between AC power and DC power, and one of them's joking about how one's so dangerous and one's so safe and blah, blah, blah. And the moral of the story is DC power is a constant stream, and I'm going to use some analogies here. So if you're an electrician or an electrical engineer or something along those lines, and it's not 100% accurate, I'm trying to draw a picture for people. I'm not trying to be precisely science-y accurate. But think of it this way, that DC power is like two roads. You have a positive road that goes out and a negative road that comes back. The positive road that goes out, all the power flows that direction down that road in a constant stream with absolutely no breaks in it and nothing. That is DC power. And then the used version of it flows back down the negative wire back to the battery. So you have your positive wire going out here and your negative wire coming back over here. And so that power is constantly flowing, and it allows for the devices to consume the power easily. The problem is that your body, when it gets hit with electrical charge, it has a tendency to tense up. And that DC power can grab a hold of your muscles. And so if you reach out and you grab something like this pin, and you grab it like that, and this power is live, all of your muscles are going to tense up on that, and you're not going to be able to let go of that pin. Or that wire, or whatever it is that you're grabbing hold of. And if you're connected to two different things, one on this side and one on this side, and that DC power grabs you, you're going to tense up all the way across, and you're not going to be able to let go. AC power is like a normal street where you have traffic flowing in both directions. You have traffic flowing this way from that side and traffic flowing this way from that side, and this power is passing each other on both sides. Now, it allows you to have power flowing both ways, but what it means is when you get shocked, and anyone who's been shocked by a large amount of voltage plugging something in or something, when AC power hits you, it basically tosses you away, it throws you away, and that's that negative side of the voltage as opposed to the positive. Because that traffic is flowing in both ways, there is a push and a pull. And that has a tendency to knock you, to throw you across the room, to knock you across it. Now, the same thing applies to interrupting this power. When electricity is flowing through that wire, that distinguishing that arc when that power has the break, and it kind of it's hard to I'll give you an example. If you reach up to your ceiling fan and you have 5 blades on it and you stick your hand in the middle, the ceiling fan's going to hit your hand and stop. But the only reason you were able to do that is because there were breaks between it. So when DC power is like one solid blade, you reach your hand up there, you hit it, you can't stop it because there's no break in the power to let it stop. And that arc, that power jumping from one to the other, and as voltage gets higher and higher, the power can jump. And you've all seen, back a long time ago, there was a TV show on where there was a scientist that would go in and he'd put his hand on a ball and his hair would stand up and the electricity would jump across the thing. The fact is that is extremely high voltage, but it's really, really low power, because the higher the voltage gets, the easier it can jump from one to another. If you look up on a light pole, you'll see that there's 3 big lines at the top, and then usually there's one little one where they have the power for our homes, the 120. Those ones at the top are usually 70,000, 90,000 volts because it's very efficient to transfer power like that. But imagine if that power wasn't AC, if that power was DC, that ability for it to grab hold of something and not let go makes it very difficult to extinguish that arc. And what he means by the arc in the question, what he's referring to, cute puppies, maybe a he, maybe a her. Sorry if I've got that wrong. But the idea here is it's very difficult to stop DC power once it's connected. And so what they'll do is there's different types of fuses. And most of you probably could look back at a video I have called T-class fuse. And a T-class fuse is basically, imagine on a normal fuse, you look in a little fuse, you got a piece of glass, there's like a little element that runs across it, and when the fuse goes out, the little element just burns out. Well, with DC power, when you start getting into high power, it continues to arc across, even though the middle piece is gone. And the higher that power gets, the bigger the amperage, and the bigger the voltage, the more difficult it becomes to put that, to extinguish, quote, extinguish that arc from that high voltage power. Now, a T-class fuse is designed to do exactly that. And I'm going to give you a rough idea of how they work, and it's not 100% precise. It uses silicone or a variation of silicon sand, and it smothers that element in that sand. So when that element burns out, the sand has the ability to smother that electric and keep it from being able to jump across. Now, there are other variations of it. You can see it in other types of fuses have different ways of extinguishing it. But the most effective and the quickest acting ones are the T-class fuse, and that's why, because they're smothering that arc. If you have the time to go out on the internet and look up an arc flash, I believe is what the technical term for it is. Some of the arc flashes that go on in electrical power when you start getting up into the high voltage are scary. So be very careful with DC, because that arc is different from a breaker switch. And this is where people get very confused about this. They think a breaker is a breaker is a breaker. Amps are amps, breakers are not breakers. A DC breaker that can extinguish DC power arc as opposed to an AC power arc are two different things, because one's trying to stop a constant flow of power, the other's trying to stop a power traveling in both directions that has this off on. 50 hertz power means that the power goes off and on and changes direction off and on 50 times a second. So it's constantly going like this down the road, whereas that DC power is all that momentum is carrying it, and it becomes very, very difficult to extinguish. And I hope that kind of gives you an idea of why they're so different. They're different from us, from our perspective, because of the way they cause your muscles to clench up. They're different from extinguishing, because once that Evel Knievel starts over that ramp, it's very difficult to stop that arc from that flow of power to keep going. And you can pull them apart, and you can still see the power jumping, especially in DC power. Okay. Hopefully that answered your question, cute puppies. Now, can I get it off the screen? Huh. There we go. Okay. So I am going to move on to part 3 of the live stream today. And if you have any other questions, feel free to ask them. Part 3 is, how many solar panels do you really need? And this is probably the number one question, and it kind of goes back to what we talked about a little earlier, but the number one question I get is, how many solar panels do I actually need? Usually asked by somebody who's new and has already bought some and they didn't end up being enough. So the answer isn't the same for everyone, because there isn't a fixed amount of usage for everyone. Most people buy too few, thinking use it for one reason or another. They see, okay, I've got 2,000 watts of solar panels and I'm only running 1,000 watts in my, they measure how much they're using and they see 1,000 watts of usage and 2,000 watts of panels, and they decide, hey, they don't need anything more. When in reality, they're using half of what they're generating. The other half is going into the battery, and a lot of it's getting lost in inverter cost and conversion cost and stuff like that. So in this discussion here, we'll kind of go over how you can figure it out step by step of how much you really need. So you want to start with an audit. And what do you actually use daily? And I mean total, not what's solar power, what's this power. Really, truly, what's that? If you're in a house, this is pretty easy. You can go out and read your meter, and you can read your meter a couple of days in a row and you can see it. You can look at your electric bill and it'll tell you how much you use. You can do measurements. There are cool, I've got some videos coming out on some cool devices that you can hook up in your breaker panel box. I did a build of a 240 volt, 50 amp metering system that you can hook up for your RV to determine what you're using there. There's a ton of different ways to actually figure out what your true energy usage is. You can also estimate this based on paper. Most devices will tell you either the watts that they use, and based on how much you use them, you can determine how many watt hours you're going to be using. If you've got and if they don't tell you wattage, most of them will tell you amperage. And if you're going to do any type of solar project, the sooner you learn that amps times volts equals watts, and every algebraic formula that you can come up with to use that is going to be very useful for you. In other words, if you've got 2 amps and it's a 120 volt device, it's using 240 volts because 120 times 2 is 240. So it's 240 watts. That formula you will use nonstop. You might as well do whatever you have to do to memorize it. I know it sounds like school again, but it's going to be something that you use quite a bit. You can take all of those calculations if you want to divide and break down all your individual devices, or you can just take the use from your whole entire house off your bill and come up with how much you're going to need and convert that into watt hours or kilowatt hours, and then that will allow you to know how much size battery power you're going to need and how to do it. The factor here of panel losses from heat and wiring and all of that is something that you're going to need to calculate in. You don't assume that just because you have 1,000 watts of solar power that you're going to get 1,000 watts to use out of it. Most likely, you're going to take that solar power and it's going to go into an inverter, and the inverter is going to have some losses to give it to you back in AC where it's usable. Or you're going to convert it from the solar panel wattage and you're going to put it into a battery, and the battery is not going to be 100% efficient and can't store all of it, and they may be 98% efficient, but even 2% over time adds up, and you'll be surprised how much the add up is there. Also, you're going to have to take into account solar peak hours and stuff like that. Now, I'm going to put a QR code up here on the screen. Messed with my video screen a minute ago and moved one of the items off, so there it goes. Okay, so there's the QR code for, where is that, the one for this one? Yeah. There we go. There's the QR code for this one. And I'm going to go over to it, and we're going to see if we can, I'm going to take you to a little website that is included in there. So we go to, there's a website there called pvwatts.rel.gov, and this is a website that is very useful. Let me see if I can get this site up, and then I'll switch it to where you can see what I'm doing here. Once I know that I'm not going to be going, oh, why in the world did I do that? All right. So this website, switch this here to this screen. That's the right one. There we go. So you should be able to see it now. So on this website, this is a really cool website because what you can do is you can come up with your zip code. And let's say that you are in Cocoa Beach here, so 32932, let's say. And I'm broadcasting from my wife's coffee shop here in Cocoa Beach today, across the street from Ron John's. If you're ever in the area, make sure you come in, tell her hello, and tell her you saw me, and then I said to come visit her. So this website is really cool because you can use this to kind of get an idea. How many panels do you really need? And it takes into account some of the things that are going to affect you. So I picked Cocoa Beach here, and you can see it takes into account the longitude and latitude of it, and you just go to the next location. Here it's asking you for how many panels. Now I'm going to use my RV as an example here, and I've got 3.7 kilowatts. Now keep in mind this is talking kilowatts, so that's 3,700 watts of power is 3.7 kilowatts. And the module types are standard module, premium module, or thin. I'm just going to say they're standard. And then it's going to ask, are they fixed, open rack mounted? Are they mounted on a roof mount? Or do they have axis tracking? And the reason they're asking this is because all these different types of mounts can affect the performance and how much energy you can actually get from them. So I'm going to say they're open rack because they're mounted on my RV. And you'll notice here that it's got a automatic loss calculator put in, and I've learned that 14% is pretty close to right for taking solar energy, doing the conversion, getting it into a battery, and that kind of thing. You may need to do it, change it a little bit. This tilt degree based on where you have them. If you've got them mounted on the side of a building, then they would be at 90 degrees. If you've got them mounted flat on top of an RV like I do, then they would be 0 degrees. This is the turn towards to where the sun is and what angle they're going to be going at. Because they're mounted flat, it doesn't make any difference for me. But if in your area, you're going to want to make sure that you point that to the right angle and adjust that to come up with the right calculation. There's detailed information on how that would be done. And then from here, I wonder if I can make that a little bit bigger for you. Oh, that worked out really well. Okay, so from here you can go next, and this is going to give you a chart of what it would expect this to generate in any given month based on your location and based on that performance. Now you can, if you've got multiple arrays, you can put in multiple calculations, change the angles, change the turn, change how many panels there are, and all of that kind of stuff, and then you can add them all together. But just to kind of give us an idea of how accurate this is, so this says in August that we should have generated about 531 kilowatt hours. So I'm going to run over here to my energy board here. Now these are only the solar panels that are mounted on the roof. This doesn't include the solar shed. So we're going to look at just this Lux Power PV energy, not the Victron, because the Victron is the solar shed power. And we're going to go back to last month. Oh, that's just looking at a day. Let's go to this month, and then let's go back to last month. Okay, so last month, and then we're going to scroll down here to how much power was generated, and I've got 498 kilowatts. So it looks like I've probably got just this is showing it a little bit more efficient, and what that most likely is I do have one panel that points north a little bit at the front of the RV. So that inefficiency isn't being accounted for here. Now, if you're talking about a fixed setup that you would have in your backyard or on your house, it will probably be close enough. This gets you in the ballpark. It doesn't get you a perfect answer, but it does give you an idea of, I could look at and say, look, I'm probably going to be generating somewhere around 5,455 kilowatt hours next year. And this takes into account rain days and all kinds of stuff for you. So it usually comes out pretty effective. Now, we did have quite a bit of rain last month, so that could have affected this outcome a little bit too, because it is based on averages. But my point is, if you're looking to build a system and you want to know how much solar panels you use, how much you really need, this tool can give you a good idea of how much you really need to come up with. So if you're looking at a house that uses, let's say, and let's just go for example, a typical house would use somewhere between 1,900 and 2,000 kilowatts a month. So if we wanted to say that we wanted to figure out what would it take and how many panels would I need to do, we can go back to the original formula here and we can say, okay, we're going to fix this, we're going to fix these panels and we're going to put them on a rack in the backyard, and we're going to start off with 10 kilowatts of power and let's see where we come in. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't kind of let you play around with it, but you can see here, even 10 kilowatts, and that's 10,000 watts of solar panels, all facing at 20 degrees, perfectly facing south, isn't enough really to provide a full energy for that house at 2,000 watts, 2,000 kilowatts per month. So this is what allows you to kind of get an idea of how much you need. Things to consider. This is not going to take into account some of the inverter that you've got, how efficient that inverter is. It's not going to take into account if you've got the wrong wires and they're getting hot and you're losing it through inefficiencies of the wire and you didn't buy a big enough wire. It's not going to take into account if you're using inefficient batteries and you're not, like lithium batteries as opposed to lead acid batteries, the difference in efficiencies there. It does allow you to set some of those factors, if you know what they are, in those calculations and come up with them. But this is just one tool that you can use to come up with an idea of how many solar panels. It will take into account the peak sun hours that you have, and it labels those on here for you, and you can see them here, right here, this solar radiation, how many peak hours you're going to have, and so on and so forth. So it does kind of give you an idea there of what you're going to get out of those while you're doing that. The RV roof, it isn't going to take into account what are you going to do when you have limitations of space. If you're in an RV, there just simply isn't any more space. I solved some of that problem by dealing with building a solar shed so I could get some extra, power out of the solar shed when I'm not moving my RV around, when I'm not traveling and stuff. Usually when I'm traveling to a much cooler environment and I don't need it, like on my trip to Connecticut a few weeks ago, or was it about a month ago now. We had more than enough power up there to handle it. It's just down here where I've got all the heat, Florida, need the air conditioners all the time. It's also, so then you need to make sure that you're watching your panel counts, you're making sure that you hit the right number of voltage to turn on charge controllers within your inverters and stuff like that. But how many you need is going to be strongly based on how much power. Now, the next question becomes, when you talk about this, is recovery rate of the difference between summer and winter. So in the summer, for example, my problem in the summer is that it gets so hot that I need extra power. In the winter, the sun has moved so far out of the sky that there isn't as much power. But those sweet zones in the middle are all wonderful. So that's something that you in your area are going to need to take into account to affect your panels, and that's where that chart can help a little bit. But you can also see the peak ones, they can't determine what you're going to need. So for example, if I look at this chart that I had up here, let me see if I can flip that back there. you can see here, it tells me that June, July, and August are great months for production. What it doesn't tell me is that my consumption is also just as great, and therefore my storage is less than normal. If I lived in a northern state where I still had the great production and still didn't have the hot weather, then I could also count on the storage. So that's the piece that you've got to determine, and a lot of the times you can pull that right out of an electric bill or whatnot. But how many panels you need is greatly influenced by how much power you're going to need to provide for the normal operation, plus how much do you need in reserve I make the joke, for a rainy day, and literally it is for a rainy day. So let me give you an example. If a rainstorm or a snowstorm comes along and you lose solar for 3 days, typically you don't lose all of solar, but you may lose all but 10% on a really bad day and 30% on just a kind of a cloudy, rainy day, and 50% on other days. But if you had a good rain for 3 straight days and you only had 30 or 40% production, how long would your batteries last is the question you need to be asking. And how bad of a recovery time do you need? So I'll kind of explain that, see if maybe I can explain this in a whiteboard. So if you're using 15 kilowatts hours a day, and you have a battery bank that is 15 kilowatt hours, then that means if you have no production for a 24-hour period, then your battery is dead. To have no production is pretty rare. So chances are, even in a hurricane, I was getting 8% generation. So that would mean that as long as I don't have 2 rainy days in a row, then I'm okay. So the question becomes is how big do you want to make this in order to not have 2 rainy days in a row? And then the next question becomes is how quickly do you want to fill that back up once you do have the 2 rainy days in a row? So for example, let's say that you have a 45 kilowatt hour battery bank, and your solar panels that we talk about can put in, what is this saying here? If we have 10 kilowatts, probably about 60 kilowatts a day. So if we have a 10 kilowatt hour solar system, on a good day you can put in 6 times that, and on a bad day you can put in 1 to 2 times that. Let's call it 1 times that. So on a bad day you may only end up getting 10 kilowatt hours into your 45 bank. Now, if you're also using 15, it means you're going backwards 5 kilowatts a day. So you need to replenish what your usage is, this 15, plus you need to add to the bank in addition to that. So on a rainy day, if you're only generating 10 kilowatts at 1x your solar panels, you are actually going to go backwards 5 kilowatts a day. Now, that would be okay in a bank of 45, because on day 1 you would be at 45. Whoa. On day 2, you would add in your 10 kilowatts and you would use your 15, which means you would be at 40 kilowatts. And that means that this could go on for 8 more days, and you're actually good for 10 solid days of rain. That's wonderful. That would be a great way for it to work. Now, chances are you're not going to have 10 rainy days in a row. And if you get a good sunny day, let's say that you do this on day 1, you're at 40, day 2 you're at 35, Day 3, you're at 30. And then you get a day where you're going to get 4x. So the sun comes out, but it doesn't stay out all day. So instead of getting, 10 kilowatts, you get 40 kilowatts. So if you get 40 kilowatts and you use 15 of it to run your house, that means that you're down to 25 kilowatts back into your bank. So if you take this, that puts you at 55 kilowatts. You are full again on day 4 because you got enough sun to completely recover. So 10 kilowatt system getting this type of power when you're only using 15 is wonderful. Now, the fact is, using 15 in a day is not a practical number. I use 20 to 25 in my RV. So, and most houses use between 30 and 40 in a day. And you could use as much as 60 to 70. So, and a 10 or a 12 kilowatt system can still produce, up to 60 kilowatts a day. But if you're using up to 60 kilowatts a day, that means on your peak days, you're going to use everything that you generate. And that means that you need to have a big enough battery on those days when you're not generating that peak that you can store. And how much you store depends on how much you use every day and how much backup you want to have. So here in Florida, going 3, 4, 5 days with rain every single day is very rare. We may have rain every day, but usually it's like you saw in those charts that I showed you earlier. If I could pull one of those up for you. You saw in one of those charts, let's see if I can do that, like this one here, you can see all these ups and downs that I've got here where the clouds come in, the clouds go out. That's a typical rainy day for us. We don't get the like in Dallas, when I lived in Dallas, sometimes you would get rainstorms that would last, where you'd have thunderstorms for 3 or 4 days in a row, and the sun would never come out. I've seen that when traveling up in Seattle, it goes like that also, where you just get clouds for 3, 4, 5 days. Up north, you could have snowstorms that last for days on end. Here, I don't get that too often. So you need to know what that window is. If you have 20 kilowatt hour usage a day, then the best rule of thumb that I've come up with is to go somewhere over 2.5 to 4 times that usage. So that means that if you have 20 kilowatt hours of usage a day, you want somewhere between 50 kilowatt hours of batteries, and 4 times that would be 80 kilowatt hours. Now that you know how big your battery bank is, then the question becomes is how long can you wait for that bank to be full again? Because you may very well only get 1 day of sun and then it go back to raining again. So it's kind of a game of gambling where you have to have a big enough bank to put this solar energy in so that when those rainy days come, that you have enough in the bank to be able to withdraw from it until you get enough, until you get a large enough deposit to fill your tank again. And that deposit, so you could theoretically say, oh look, I use 15 kilowatts, or I use 20 kilowatts a day, and I generate 25, so I'm going to be fine. I generate 25, I use 20. But that technically means, best case scenario, is you're going to add 5 kilowatts to this bank every day. And that means that if you're only adding 5 kilowatts to it, if you've run it down to let's say 10, or let's say it's 20 kilowatts is in this bank, and you have a day where you only generate 5, it's empty. And when it's empty, it's empty. Everything shuts off. So, and then you're going to generate 25 the next day, even if it's perfectly sunny, and then 25 the next day after that, and then it's going to go from having 0 in the bank to having 5 in the bank, and then day 2 it'll have 10 in the bank, day 3 it'll have 15 in the bank, day 4 it'll have 20 in the bank. Well, if you get another rainy day after that 4-day gap, you're back to 0. So 25 generation probably isn't enough. How much is enough is going to be a question for you to answer, because you're the only one that knows how much that rain is going to affect you in your area. For me, I don't have too much trouble with, I have a 30 kilowatt battery, 30 kilowatt hour battery. We use between 20 and 30 a day, but I do have grid as backup power, so I don't have that. And if I'm traveling and I'm out, boondocking somewhere, I have a generator for backup power. So it's not necessary that you deal with it every time, especially if you're peak shaving, your peak hour shaving or something like that, where you know that between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. your electricity costs 10 times more than normal, and you just want to make sure that you have power coming from your solar system between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. That's very easy to do because you just basically don't use it during the peak hours of the day. You use the grid then, and you can accommodate making sure that you're using solar at this point. So this is the number of panels that you need is very dependent upon two calculations that you really have to come up with. One is how big is your usage? Two, how big is your backup bucket and how long can you take to fill it? I can fill my backup bucket at about 10% a day if I have really bad storms for 3, 4, 5 days in a row and my battery gets down to almost nothing. And you can see it happening, going down 10, 12% a day, and then all of a sudden the sun starts coming out and it starts going up. The peak, the top of it is 10% higher every day, consistently over and over and over. I'm okay with that because the risk is relatively low. Now, if I was off grid and I was, living with my family in the middle of the woods, it would be completely different. My battery bank would not be 30 kilowatt hours. It probably would be closer to 100 kilowatt hours, so that I could have that week or 2 weeks in there where I didn't have to worry about that gap of things running out. Now, so seasonal differences are really, really huge. The biggest trick here, and what they call, quote unquote, the golden rule, is that more panels is usually the cheapest way to solve a lot of problems. It solves the problems of, how much electricity can I use during the day? You run your dryer during the day. You run your cooking during the day. You do all of this stuff during the day, your peak usage, and you do it. If you have more panels, even if you can't store the energy, you can use the energy right then and there. Then it allows you to store the excess energy and you use your batteries for backup days. More panels allows you to recover faster. More panels allows you to do things during those peak hours and automate things to happen. For example, turn on well pumps and pump water during those peak hours, as opposed to storing that energy. You pull the water when you have the ability and you have tanks to store it in, as opposed to you run it. It depends on if you're running in a cabin in an off-grid situation, or if you're running in a big city and you're just trying to shave off some high rates and stuff. So a lot of those elements come into. So how much do you need? The best rule of thumb is as much as you can afford, but there is a limit to how much you're using versus how much you need to actually be able to recover. And that's where you're going to have to draw the line and say, use that formula, use that website that I had to basically give you an idea of what those are, and can you use it to give that calculation and understand how much solar panels are done. Oversize where you can. Don't plan just for what you have today. This is a really common mistake, as people say, oh, well, I'm only using 5 kilowatt hours a day, therefore I'm going to generate 5 and I'm done. It never works that way. As soon as you have what you absolutely need, you're going to want, you're going to want to cook an extra pot of coffee. You're going to want to leave it on instead of shutting it off every time. You're going to want to have an extra bath and have the extra hot water. You're going to want to leave the big one for me is I don't mind turning the hot water off and on when I need it, but it just drives a family crazy to have to know when to schedule hot water. And I'm going to do dishes, I need hot water. I'm going to do this. So to be able to just leave it on and know that, hey, you're going to burn a couple of extra kilowatts a day, and that's legitimately
I can say that that's exactly what I've done this summer, is to find out. I come over here into the energy board and roll down here to the bottom. I can legitimately say that the hot water heater here is, bad example, hot water heater is accounting for, yeah, it's got a reset in there of some craziness. What is today? Today. So, hot water heater is 2.4 kilowatts yesterday. And I go back again to the day before, it's 1.9. So it uses about 2 kilowatts a day to just have, and here we got 3.7 kilowatts. So it uses a couple of kilowatts a day just to keep hot water, even if I don't use any of it. Now, if I use it, as you can see here, that usage is almost doubled. Now, who knows what that was? Could have been a whole bunch of laundry, could have been a whole bunch of extra showers, or, you know, who knows what it was. But that's the thing, is understanding that energy math to know what it is and how you can use that power the right way. But solar panels are usually one of those where the more the better, because it makes all your recoveries easier. So I've provided you the link to that is in the QR code here. And if you have any questions, I would love to if you do your calculations differently or you come up with something different. I use a general rule of thumb. I'm going to pretty much can guarantee I can get 1 times the solar panels I have, and the peak is going to usually be close to 6 times the solar panels I have. That's just a simple rule of thumb. If I got 2 kilowatts of solar panels, 2,000 watts of solar panels, then I'm going to get somewhere between 2 kilowatts a day and 12 kilowatts a day from those solar panels. It's just a simple rule of thumb I use, and it pretty much applies to everything. But it's going to vary based on how your panels are all set up. QR code for those that are watching it on TV. You can just scan this QR code; it'll take you there. Or you can do it on your phone. If you're watching, then the links in the description below. Also, you can get to them there. Don't forget to subscribe to the email list, because I'm going to have some cool stuff coming out in the email list, and only those subscribed to the email list is going to have it. You can find the links for that down there. And the panels, I just want to kind of remind you, the panels are really the foundation of your system here. And you can build a system around panels knowing how much power you need. Sometimes it's the inverter you start with, sometimes it's the panels. It really just depends on the system. If you're like in an RV or something where you have a very specific need for a certain inverter, then you build the system around that and you get whatever panels there are. If you're in a home, you pretty much figure out what panels you can do, and then figure out what they are, and then you may build a system to match it. So hopefully that covers the subject of solar panels. Any questions about that before we move on to the 4th? It looks like I'm not going to make it through all 6 subjects today. I think I'm going to stop after 4. So I am going to do are solar generators worth it in 2025? And basically the solar generators are practically everywhere right now. And the real question becomes is, are they worth it? And this kind of overlaps with an earlier subject, but it really is. This one I'm going to focus explicitly on, are the generators worth the extra money that you pay for them for that convenience? I've tested a bunch of them against the DIY systems, and there are some trade-offs. As we can talk about the convenience of solar generators, and it comes down to what are your uses for the solar generator as opposed to the DIY. The technology's come a long way, and the cool part is the batteries have now gotten to the point where as long as you're buying a solar generator with a LifePod battery, LifePod 4 battery, they're going to last quite a while. The electronics in them will probably wear out before the actual batteries do, which is something we can't say about our cell phones. Usually we end up with the walking around with a charger cable connected to our cell phone 24/7. Um, but let's but the technology's come a long way. The batteries have gotten a lot better, and so I think that from that extent, they're really good. We can talk about that a little bit. Let's also talk about where do they shine and where do they fall short. Where are solar generators really strong and very helpful, and where do they not work so well, and you should really think about another alternative. So before you, and some of them can be very expensive because you're paying a premium for them to put this together for you and to wrap it all up in a nice neat package. You're paying a premium. So before you go out and rush out and buy one, you really ought to look at all of the options available and decide if they're the right choice for you. You might be surprised in some of the situations where it actually makes the most sense to not have a solar generator as opposed to having a solar generator. All right. I think I got the wrong UPC code there. There we go. There's the UPC code for the solar generators. So let's talk about exactly what is a solar generator first. And I want to clarify my definition of a solar generator. And that is when they basically take the inverter, the charge controller, the battery, all the plugs and ports and everything that you would need to operate short of solar panels. They wrap it all together for you. They seal them in a box, and you basically they're plug and play, and you don't have to hook up any wires. You don't have to connect anything except the solar panels. That is my definition of a solar generator, and it's a pretty generic definition in the industry. Most everything else is some level of DIY solar where you're putting together charge controllers with batteries. Even when you have an all-in-one charge, an all-in-one units that have come out these days, you still have to hook up separate batteries, separate solar panels. You can run them in parallel. You can, hook up more than one battery and so on and so forth. So you still have a lot of flexibility with those DIY systems. A solar generator is usually an all-in-one unit, and it's very limited in its ability to be upgraded short of adding storage space being batteries, and even that in most cases is very limited. Where they shine is that they are very, very easy to use. You could basically take a solar generator, you can throw it in the back seat of your car, and you can head out of town. You could stop at the side of the road. You could plug in a coffee pot. You could make yourself a pot of coffee. You could keep your freezer cold. You could, charge your cell phones. You can go fishing and use it to keep a refrigeration for whatever you catch, for your dinner, for whatever you want. The ease of use is just outstanding. Plug and play, set up in a few minutes. Charging can be done from where you plug them into a wall and then you use them as you're traveling or whatever. You can also hook up some solar panels. They have some portable panels that you can just plug in and set on the side and use them that way. So ease of use is key here. The portability for tailgating, for camping, for weekend warriors out at RVing and stuff like that, the portability is bar none. There is no comparison to it. They're safe, they're designed to be moved around, and all of that. So no real problems there. The cost per watt over DIY is extraordinarily higher than it would be if you were to build the same system yourself with a DIY system. And that's why when you get into a fixed system as opposed to a portable fishing hobby type thing, you'd probably want to go with a DIY system as opposed to a solar generator. Solar generators can cost sometimes 2 to 3 times more than building a system of your own, not to mention the lack of flexibility when it comes to expanding them and so on and so forth. Expandability is very limited. You get some extra batteries occasionally, but pretty much that's going to be about it. You really can't increase the inverter power. You can't really increase the a lot of the other features and things that come along with them. They're very limited in that they're designed to do a very specific product purpose. They're built to do that, and you pay the premium for it to do exactly what you wanted it to do when you bought it. So you have to be very careful to make sure that whatever future plans you have, you take into account, because there's no take backs with these, and some of these can run thousands of dollars, and so your investment is really high, and the risk of not having what you need when you're done. On the other side, you still can buy a separate one to do separate things, so there is some of that. One of the things that they shine in is safety and reliability. They've got a lot of built-in protections. They've got built-in fuses and breakers. They've got UI certifications. They've got there's no hands-on experience required. If you're, a retiree and you just want your RV to have lights and a fan, there's no comparison. The solar generator is perfect for that type of thing. Longevity, battle cycles, they are going to last. They're going to start to wear and tear, and it's only going to be as strong as its weakest part. So that means even if the Life Power 4 battery can do, the 25, 30 years of cycles as it would with a DIY battery, it's not going to be able to do that in a solar generator. And the reason being is every piece of wire, every connector, every battery, every inverter, every electrical piece, if any one of them break, they're not serviceable. They're not. It's like buying a TV in today's world. When your TV breaks, you don't take it to a repair guy anymore. You just go buy a new one. And the same thing's true with this. So longevity, you might end up with some issues there, whereas the DIY system, the flexibility is you can replace the one component, you can upgrade the one component, you can expand the one component. Where they really shine, though, is off-grid emergency use. So let's talk about the case where you have a very specific use case. For example, you have a refrigerator that you keep medical supplies in or something along those lines. You can have a backup solar generator that you plug that, if it's sized correctly and it's, and you've got it ready when this happens, you can plug that refrigerator in and it run nonstop and completely and totally be maintenance free the rest of the year, short of making sure you keep it charged and all that. It can also do double duty as being great for going camping and road trips and that kind of stuff. But then you have it when those emergencies come up. That's when they really shine, is temporary short-term use of emergency circumstances or convenient circumstances. That's going to be your number one benefit and where they really, really, really shine. When you should avoid them, when you have any kind of home power hungry type things. If you're trying to run air conditioners, if you're trying to run large devices that long-term off-grid type environments, they're not going to be your best thing because the wear and tear on them, like I said, they're not as serviceable as something like a DIY system. So this is where you really should start to avoid them, is when you start trying to get, you're going to do a whole home backup, or you're going to do long-term off-grid for your cabin or something like that. You're going to be better off there with a DIY system. That's going to really truly be the weakness to them, is in that thing. They're kind of say, the overall thing is they're perfect for emergencies, for camping, for quick setups and tear downs, weekends, that kind of thing. But they're not good for long-term use. They're not good for big industrial environments or big air conditioners, or basically saying, hey, if I get hit by a hurricane, I'm going to run my whole house on them. They're not going to work for that. They're more for your emergency use, very limited use, very short term. They shine in those environments. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Drop them in the comments below. The QR code that's on the screen has links to a whole bunch of different units and systems and things. Hopefully you'll find some of those helpful. Um, they're kind of the top picks and the top generators on the market at this point. Make sure you subscribe to the email list. I'm going to have some cool drawings and stuff in the future, and those that are already signed up, don't risk missing them. Also, you get some really cool news and up and coming events and things that I've got going on. I'll let you know about them. And hopefully that helps you with that. With solar generators in 2025, the thing is, sure, if you're going to use them for short-term use, yes, they're a great thing. Get the right size, they'll serve you well. If you're looking for anything long-term or something like that, then no, they're not gonna be able to do that. That brings us to the fifth chapter in our program today. Started losing my voice a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and change the QR code here. In the fifth chapter, we're going to talk about solar emergencies. What are the must-haves and what should you have ready? So, in this chapter, we're going to go over when the power goes out, solar can literally be a lifesaver. But the question is, do you have the right setup when it happens? What are those essentials that you need to have to make it work for you? And do you want lighting, refrigeration, critical loads, and we'll kind of cover some of those and go over the benefits, the ups and the downsides to each one of them. Whether it's a hurricane, wildfires, blackouts, solar can make the difference in making your life very easy. Many a times I've looked outside and seen the power out during storms and had no idea that all my neighbors were dealing with outages. This is one of those most practical uses of solar. So let's get to some of the good points here. So I'm going to start off by identifying essential loads. This is where you're going to want to go through and identify in your house those things that you could not live without. And this goes into what we call the essential loads, and I look at them as, well, I'm going to need my lights, and maybe not all of your lights, but you are going to need some key lights. You're going to want your fridge. You're going to want your phone to be powered. You're going to want any medical devices, and separate the list from those essential loads to those non-essential loads. You're going to want to, you can build an essential loads, and this is what we call a sub panel off of your main panel that has only the essential loads, so that when this happens, you can run those loads fully off of solar. Now, most people, when they hook up a essential loads type panel, they run it off of solar all the time to supplement, to basically take those off of your grid usage and lower your electric bill and stuff, which is a great way to do it. Don't look at solar as, I'm only going to use it during emergency cases, which you can do. You can set it up in an UPS type environment, a backup pipe power, where it's there, it's always charged up 100%, and when the power goes out, boop, it switches over and it takes over. A lot of the generator companies, Generac is really big about running commercials saying, when the power goes out, and they show the power going out and everyone's sitting around watching TV, and then the power comes back on and everything's fine. In a real outage, and I suffered through one last year with a hurricane here in Florida, and in a real outage, that's not the way it works. In a real outage, the power goes out, And about 4 hours later, all the backup systems for the cable company, the cell phone towers, the everything that has power goes off. Now you have power. You can charge your phone, but if there's no cell towers for you to talk to because they have no power, it doesn't matter. You can plug in your TV, but if there is no cable TV at the corner having power, you're not going to receive it. You can have your internet router, but if the cable internet has gone down and they don't have power, you're not going to have it neither. So that's why you have to think about these things in a little bit bigger terms. If you have Starlink, then you could power your Starlink, and that could be part of your essential loads, and then you would have internet. And that would allow you to watch streaming, and that would give you internet access, and that would probably make your text messages and stuff from your phones work. And that was kind of what I had to deal with last year when the power went out, is we lost all of these essential services. Now, initially, they've all got backup systems. They're all there intentionally for that. But when a hurricane comes through and takes out the power grid, those backup systems have an expected life expectancy, and they may be 2 hours, 4 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours. But when your power's out in a long term like that, they all go down, and you lose them all. So, figure out what the minimum wattage that plus the battery, and what it would cost you to just have the solar system running with nothing connected to it. Because when the power goes out, the first thing you start doing is you go into conservation mode. Well, I can live without this, I can live without this, I can live without this, I can live without this. But even having the inverter there and on can cost you some power. And a lot of even batteries have BMSs, and the BMS can use some variation of power over a period of time. So let's look at a basic solar system with a 6000 XP in your house. It may use a kilowatt a day just idle, sitting there doing nothing. And so those are the type of things that you really need to take into account. I worked with an inverter a few weeks ago when I redid the 12-volt solar shed, just for the purposes of showing you guys how to build a 12-volt solar shed. And it actually had a really cool feature that when there was less than 15 watts of power usage, it would shut the inverter down, and it would basically go into this really super conservation mode where it used almost no power until it sensed that there was a need for it, and then it would turn back on. Now, essentially what that allowed it to do is to go into where it was using a few watt hours a day when the power wasn't being used, and then it could come back on. Now, there were some downsides to it. For example, I use Shelly devices to turn off and on light switches so I can control them with my phone. Well, they don't have power if they're not powered. So if the inverter's off because it doesn't sense the power usage, and there's no way to turn them back on. So those devices didn't work properly when it was like that. But in a typical power outage like a hurricane or something like that, that would be a definite mode that I would immediately flip on so that I would have no usage when there was no usage, and usage when there was usage, but I didn't have that idle consumption. So those are the kind of things that you've got to think about. Can your inverter handle that? Can your solar system handle that? My 6000 XP that's in my RV, it can't handle that. It can't do something like that. But that system in an RV would be in an RV, in a shed, or as a backup system for a house of some kind, not the whole house, but a backup system, an emergency system for critical loads of running a refrigerator or freezer would be fantastic, because it would basically say when the refrigerator shut off, it was off. And so the making sure that you have the right inverters. The one thing that a lot of Amazon, a lot of these major providers and stuff, they're still selling these inverters that are not safe for a lot of your critical electronics. And I know you hear it all the time when they talk about generators being pure sine inverter generators. You need to make sure that your inverter itself is not that it is a pure sine wave inverter. And if you've got access to an oscilloscope which I recently got one, you'll find that even some of those aren't really as clean as they claim to be. So you need a good power, because the last thing you want to do is have a power outage and then damage your refrigerator or damage your laptop or damage one of your other devices because you plugged it into something that just had this dirty power and stuff like that. That's where devices like a charge inverter, where you take that dirty power and you can pump it into your battery system and use it for your solars, is something when I'm recommending on a consultation. So if someone schedules a consultation with me and they're talking about a solar system that's used for this type of a purpose, I almost always refer them to a charge inverter, because a charge inverter allows you to use a cheap, dirty generating old generator that you can buy off of, used, and pump it into your batteries directly and not worry about it harming any of your electrical devices, because it cleans all that power up, converts it to do just the battery charging, and then your inverter can use it out of the battery charging. The nice thing about that is I'm not running the generator 24/7. I run it at maximum efficiency for an hour or two to charge the batteries and pull it at 80 or 90% of its maximum capacity all at one time, and then shut off, and then I don't have to run a generator for several days until I end up back in these scenarios where my batteries start to get low after a couple of days. It's a much more efficient way of doing things. If you have any questions about that, please send me an email or put a note in the comments below, and I'll be glad to answer them for you. But it's a really important point for you guys that are building these off-grid systems that want to use it in emergency circumstances like that. There's a couple of easy workarounds that you can get away with a lot less expensive. Instead of going out and buying the $3,000 generator so that you can run these things, you can buy the $400 generator with a $400 part. And when the generator wears out, you can just get another generator and not have to worry about the parts and stuff being bad. Important battery chemistry that you're paying very close attention to, the different battery chemistries that you're doing. If you're using a solar system and the BMS in a LifePod battery will save that battery from being damaged, but in an off-grid situation where you're running medical devices and things like that, it's very possible that you could cause damage to your lead acid batteries and those type of things. So you want to be careful not to have the damage those type of equipment. But if you're doing it because you have to, because you're running medical devices, that's one thing. But if you're not doing it for medical devices and stuff like that, then you need to be very careful about that. And that's one thing that you need to test before you get into this environment. The one thing that I learned through the hurricane last year is that nothing allows you to perform in an emergency other than performing in an emergency. My suggestion is, all of you who think you have a system that can back up and allow you to live off-grid, that allows you to work, is test it. Don't assume that it's going to do anything the way you think it is going to do. I had all of these equipment, all of this stuff, knew exactly what was going on, but never had used some of it in a real scenario. And there's nothing like a real scenario to give your system a test. So watch out for your battery types, battery chemistry, making sure that you understand what damage they're going to do, and figure out what you're going to do when it happens. How are you going to charge your batteries? Always have a backup plan. Always have some way to get things back, even when everything goes the wrong way, which it did for me. I had a perfect, just so you all know, my RV was 100% off-grid. It was parked, and it had 4 feet of water around it, and I had no access to get to it. All I had to do is get in that RV and drive 50 miles inland, and I would have lived through everything with that hurricane with absolutely no problem. But instead, I had to suffer through having no solar system other than a small 24-volt system that was in the coffee trailer, and a couple of 500-watt panels to live through that entire thing off grid with no power for a week. And I don't mean no power like, hey, the guy across the street had power. I mean like no power anywhere. All the equipment, cell phones, cell towers, cable companies, internet, all of it, everything gone. And sadly, I had the RV sitting right there. And all I could think to myself is, I will never do this again. I will never get myself in an installation. I run tests all the time now and that's what got me involved in doing this and producing these videos and making these videos for you guys, is that it happened to me, I lived through it, and I want to make sure that everyone understands the importance of it. A small generator for a backup, even a small generator can be a lifesaver, because you can go into emergency mode, you can shut down everything except really super critical loads, and you can get things charged up. I have a small little Champion generator that's 2,000 watts that I can use in a mission critical place to charge my batteries that way also. But I did not assume that it would just be able to do it. I had to make sure that I could connect it, I could actually do it, and I actually lived a month like that where I used that as the backup plan for getting power into my RV. Didn't just assume I could do it. DIY kits for longer term are very scalable, and they allow you to hook up batteries. If you have a solar system that does not have a battery and the power goes out, you have no power no matter how much solar you have. Those are all dependent upon the grid being in existence and being able to match the power that's there, so that you don't electrocute some lineman trying to hook back up your power for you. Solar panel portability, folding panels versus fixed panels. If you're in a location where you can have, I have a very unique case with my RV. I have fixed panels on the RV. I have fixed panels on the solar shed. But when I travel, I have panel problems if I'm traveling into a warmer area. I moved to Florida from Texas, so I like to go back to Texas and visit friends and stuff like that. Texas doesn't have the coolest weather year-round. So you do have a tendency to use more power when you're in heated areas and run the air conditioner more. Not to mention, me and my wife both like to sleep with the air conditioner very cold at night. It makes for a good night's sleep. It's pure as simple as that. So it's important that you understand those backup plans, that you understand that fixed panels and portable panels are not the same thing. They don't produce the same way, and their life expectancy isn't the same. A typical fixed panel has less than between 0.5% and 1% of degradation per year. Most people think they deteriorate really quick and go away. They don't. Now, the connectors will wear out. Sometimes the cables will wear out. You may have to do some maintenance on that. But buying used panels is a solid deal. The initial investment has already been made, and you can get a great thing. There's links for used panels down below, and I think they're actually in the channel here also. Shop Solar and Santan Solar have some really good used deals. Now, with buying used panels, keep in mind that the deals don't last forever. They're not like they have a big warehouse full of them. They do the same thing that I do when I'm finding my panels. They find people that are looking to upgrade. They find solar farms that are closing down. They find homes that are selling them. So they may only have 1 pallet of them, or 2 pallets of them, or 10 pallets of them, and then they're gone. So the deals are good, but you have to move when you find something that you really want. Keeping extension cords and power strips in a useful location, it was probably one of the biggest hurdles that I ran into. I have a nice power station, and I probably could show it to you. I have a nice power station that plugs into a 50 amp breaker, Home Depot, a 50 amp breaker, and turns it into a bunch of 110 wall outlets. Let's see, power station, see if I can find it here. turns it into a bunch of wall outlets so that I can run a whole bunch of different things off of. Oh, here it is. Let me see if I can show it to you here. So this thing here, you can plug in a 50 amp plug right over here, and then you get all of these circuits, these 120 amp circuits and stuff. This thing is fantastic at conventions, at shows. So I had this at the house. I used the food trailer. I had the food trailer there, so I had a small 24 volt, 200 amp hour system that I could use. And I had fortunately I had the 9500 inverter generator from that I used for the food truck. And then I had this, and I was able to run a 50 amp cord right into a big 220 amp cord right into the to the house. But running extension cords and everything from this is what really got me, because I had no way to hook it up to the house. I had no way to test it. I had no way to isolate those critical panels that we talked about, those critical loads. So I had to unplug the refrigerator and plug it in over here. And I had to unplug this and plug it in over there. And I had to plug the cell phones into this and run an extension cord for that. So this is one of those things that was enormously grateful that I had it. But a little bit of planning ahead of schedule could have changed the whole thing for me on this, the whole way I look at things. Where am I going here? Let's see. Small solar generator as a backup to grab and go can be very useful too. And what I mean by that is it's wonderful to have these nice big solar systems. But if you have to hit the road and you need to move quickly, those solar generators are priceless, because they're convenient, they're safe, they're reliable, they're all UI rated, they keep everything great, and they're great there. The DIY is for the long term, the scalable solutions, the solar panel portability. Those don't have the life expectancy. They wear out quickly. They die out fast. So I encourage you that if you're going to have those, that you take really good care of them, because they're much more, what is the word for it? They are much more fragile than regular solar panels, because they get moved around, and because of all that. Their life expectancy isn't the 0.5% or 1% a year. I would venture to guess they're probably 5 to 10% a year. They lose a lot of efficiency over time, and the wear and tear on them is much greater. So test your system before the actual outage so that you know it works. Bonus thing, living in an RV, one of the things I learned that was really, really helpful, and running this channel and being able to produce things for you guys. Yes, Gene, I'll get right to that. Let me just go over this real quick, and I will answer that question. That is a great thing to point out. Bonus tip, there are a lot of LED lights, 12-volt fans, and small freezers. I did a refrigerator freezer one that plugs into 12 volts and 24 volts, ran off of a car battery. I ran it for 7 days on one charged car battery with no solar. Even a trickle charger would have been enough to actually probably run that refrigerator or freezer for a very long time. The 7 days that it ran on one battery, it was a 100 amp hour 12 volt battery. It probably could have ran for 3 weeks had I had a little trickle charger running on it. So keep in mind those devices that don't require inverters, the lights. Living in an RV, I have a lot of 12 volt devices anyway, so I don't have to have the inverter on for everything. But small freezers, things like that. One other thing I learned during the hurricane was that it is always cheaper and easier to store ice in a deep freeze. The power consumption for that and a refrigerator is the same, but you can always use the ice to keep things, to refrigerate things for longer periods of time. So storing the ice in the deep freeze is actually a great way to keep frozen things frozen, and then transfer some of the ice and the frozen things to a refrigeration and use them as they fall as the refrigeration unit. It was a very, very handy way for me to extend the life of all of everything that I had. Fortunately, I had a deep freeze full of ice in the food trailer, which was invaluable when it came time for the hurricane. One of the things that Gene has brought up, and I want to bring it up here on the screen, is you might please discuss if it is worth it to get scratch and dent panels to repair and use if they are not too badly damaged. I heard that companies get rid of large numbers at once, and some are still okay. Absolutely, this is some of the, if you look at the links that I've got for shop solar kits and Santan, and matter of fact, let's just do that right here while we're on the subject. I'm going to click on this one here, and we are going to see if I can click on it. Okay, here we go. So you can see here these used panels, and open box, and open box. So this is shop solar kits. Now, if I open the Santan, they will almost always have some scratch and dent type things, and scratch and dent and other types of things. So here you can see these have cracked vinyl. These have solar panels with green bus bars, meaning that they just didn't get painted, and the panels are probably fine. So you'll notice here on this Santan Solar Link, they do a lot of this. They do a lot of used panels. The deals change out here constantly. They are a fantastic company to work with, and if you use the links, obviously I get a small commission from it also. And let's see. So they do a lot of use, and today they have specifically. I mean, if you look at this list, it just goes on and on and on of used panels here, and they will give you a list of what's broken with them. So you can see here, this one's got snail trails. They've got mono panels with black frames. So a lot of the times they're cosmetic damages, and there's no harm to them, and there's no damage to them. And you can look up the meaning of a lot of these out there and see what the problem is in the manufacturing process that went wrong, or something like that. If they're selling them new, they have to be perfect, or they can't charge full price. So a lot of them will end up here being clearanced for a fraction of the cost. I mean, you can see here, and this is a lot of 24 panels for $375. Now, they're not all big, new, fancy panels, but a lot of these panels are still good panels. And yes, if you get some of them, you may have to do some repairs on them. I bought some used panels from a guy once, and every one of the connectors had to be replaced. But to be honest with you, it's one of those things that wear out so frequently that replacing $10 worth of solar connectors on the end of them, you want them to all be the same brand anyway to be safe. So it really wasn't that big of a deal, and it saved me thousands in panel cost. Now let's go back to your question over here is, oh, I see. Got to leave that screen over here, or I can't use it, can I? Sorry, LG equals large. Yeah, I figured that out after I read through the rest of it. No, you're fine. Out of characters, yep. And one more question: is there a good source for learning the basics of solar and basic electricity? There are. I do a lot of basic solar videos. There's a whole chapter, or there's a whole playlist in my channel for it, and I'm constantly doing new sections about it and stuff like that. But there are a ton of good electricians and electricity type, basic electricity. I've even done a few of them on that too. about different electricity things, but there is a ton on YouTube. My suggestion is you go find a good YouTube channel where somebody who posts good quality videos, and if you can't find one, write me after the live stream. Just send me an email or write me in write me in the comments and ask me for one, and I will tell you one of mine, because there's a half a dozen of them that I watch also. I get almost all of my my content off of YouTube. If I'm not posting it, then there's somebody that is, or I'll find somebody that does and gives you a good source for that. But absolutely. All right. Did I finish the solar for emergencies? I got to do a little bit of a wrap up here on solar for emergencies. I'll put that QR code back up on the screen for a few minutes. So the important thing to remember about solar for emergencies is even a small solar system can keep lights on, keep your phone charged, keep things like that. A little bit bigger system, you can keep refrigerators running, medical equipment, and kind of get back to somewhat of a normal life as long as you've done some of that prep that we talked about earlier. You get into even bigger off-grid systems where the grid went down, and you can get into where life can be almost completely normal. I know in my RV at this point, half the time my grid's unplugged, I don't even know it's unplugged until I go to say I need to do something, and I want to go into backup mode or something, bypass, and there's no grid there. So you can go from one extreme to the other. But that's it comes down to affordability, how much of it. A lot of people talk about with solar systems and what is the payback time frame, and my question to them always is, well, what is the payback for your car? You could buy an Uber every time you want to travel, but you don't want the inconvenience of having an Uber. That doesn't mean it's essential. Same thing's true with electricity. You can pay the electric company all the time, but that doesn't mean you have the convenience of having power all the time, and with the hurricanes and stuff like that. So the same thing's true there. I've linked a bunch of different systems and stuff in the link, give you an idea of different solar systems, different kits and stuff like that for the DIY. I've also linked a bunch of power stations and stuff like that, and it should help you get a little bit of an idea of what you're going to need to do it. But if you have questions or problems with the codes, or questions about off-grid, about what's essential, what am I trying to say here? What are the essential loads? What is an essential load panel or something like that? Feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you have specific installations that you want to go over, I do a lot of consultations. You can schedule those right on my website. They're always in the comments. You can get to that. All right. That was the fifth subject, and I have one more for the night. As long as I didn't miss any comments, it looks like I've got everything. Gene, if you've got anything else, please let me know. I'll be glad to answer them. This last subject is one of those that I try to have when I know my wife isn't watching, and hopefully she's not online tonight. If you were going to build your system again today, what would you do that was different? This always comes down to, what are the things that cost you a lot of money would you change? And so it's kind of I've built multiple solar systems, and along the way I've made some mistakes. I mean, we're all human. We all do it. If I could start over, what would I do differently? And when I was building the content for this, I started coming up with a list of items that I could do, things that I would do differently. And I'll probably think of a few more while I'm here, because you end up with so many regrets. At the same time, there's so many things that went right that it depends on how you want to look at it to what you want to do. I'm going to go ahead and change the QR code here to, if I built it now, the links for that one. And to be honest with you, I'm not even sure I remember what I put in this QR code. So, and I'm sure I put in a list of different things that pertain to some of my regrets. So the first one was, um, by no means is this a complete list of things I screwed up, but it is a fun list to go through. Batteries. I'm going to have to say that was my first one. I bought 3 Life Power 4 batteries when I first started, and I bought the one without the screen on the front, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to have it hooked up to my system. I'm not going to pay any attention to it. I'll get the readout from the 6000 XP. But you know, things change. I switched to a DIY battery, and I added that in because I wanted more storage. And if I was to do it again today, knowing what I know right now, I would build all my batteries myself, not because I would save a lot, because I would probably save a lot. Not as much as I would have a couple years ago, but I still would save quite a bit building a DIY battery. But I would do it because I could fit it specifically in the spot in the RV where I'd want, and I would build it to adapt it to exactly how I want it to fit. And I would build it a little bit bigger for the same amount of money. At the time that I built the batteries, I said to myself, I don't have any earn to build batteries myself. Since getting involved in it, solar is a little addictive. I'll give you a warning right off the bat. It's very addictive. And so that would be one of the things that I probably would do differently. Not because specifically I made any mistake with the battery. I would buy the battery with the screen now, with the status on them, so that I could see what the screen was. But I would probably just go and build them all DIY battery. I'd probably just put in a big shipment to have a bunch of battery cells shipped to me. And I probably would even maybe go with those new MB56 cells, which are huge battery banks, a 30 kilowatt hour battery bank for one battery. And I would probably go a little bit bigger. I got 30 kilowatts of battery now. I would probably mount it in the front of the RV and probably have to figure out if I could actually support the weight or not. But that would be one of my biggest ranks, is that I ended up mixing all my batteries, the 2 different types, and I probably could have done it once if I had paid a little bit closer attention to how much battery power I need, paid a little bit closer attention to the audit that I performed on the RV. I did do an audit and replace all the air conditioners with mini splits and stuff before I did the solar, so that I kind of knew what it was. And it worked exactly the way I wanted it to work. It's just, once something works, you want to make it better. And I didn't think about what would I do to make it better. I thought about what do I think I want right this minute. And that's kind of a regret that I have. Panel sizing. I can't really say it was a regret for the RV. I bought 12 panels originally to put on the RV, thinking I could get up there and do it. I bought the Aptos 370 watt panels. They were really hot at the time, and they are fantastic bifacial panels. I bought the bifacial, even though they're being mounted flat on the RV, because they were a little bit lighter, and I didn't want the extra weight. I wasn't worried about them being fragile. The solar panels are a lot tougher than people give them credit for. So I really can't say that I regret the solar panels. I bought 12 of them. I ended up putting 10 on the RV, and I used 2 for the the coffee trailer, for my wife's coffee trailer. The only regret I got there is I wish I had bought more to handle some real future expansion. I would love to have another set of 12 or a dozen of those to mix and match at the solar shed, and have them go into the same MPPT and all that, instead of having separate MPPTs for them for when I travel and stuff. I made all kinds of mistakes with wiring. I screwed this one up so bad. I bought wire 3 times. And the simple fact is that it it's very easy to see something and to jump and say, oh, well, if I order this, I can get it, quickly and fast. And what ended up happening is I ordered wire, and then when I got it in, I realized it wasn't big enough, so I ordered more wire, and then when I got that in, I realized it was copper clad, not copper, and so I had to order it again. And each time we're talking, hundreds and hundreds of dollars of wire. Wire's not cheap, and it was a pretty bad mistake. I screwed that one up pretty bad. I think back to all the. Now, the upside to it is since then I started doing a lot of videos, and I've used a lot of the wire for other systems. And for those of you who watched the Solar Shed series, you saw one of the pieces, the aluminum clad wire that I used, the copper clad aluminum wire that I used in the building of the Solar Shed on a 12-volt system, and it simply couldn't handle it. And that's why I ended up buying wire a second time. I had to replace it with another piece of that wire that I had bought on the third time. I used some of the wire that I bought the first time in that same build for running the charging cables from the charge controller. So I've ended up using a lot of it, but not because I chose to purchase it, but because I accidentally, because I bought the wrong damn wire and I had to live with it. So that one, it was really bad. Inverter, I can't say I have one regret. The 6000 XP is a fantastic inverter. It fit the RV perfectly. It fits the power needs perfectly. I have no regrets with that one. The charge controller that I put in the RV for running secondary panels, I should have bought a much bigger one. I recently bought a big Victron charge controller to replace the one in the RV, and a future video will be about that. I wish I had done that right off the bat. Reason being is the reason being is that it's much easier to do it and have the charge controller equally sized to what the 6000 XP can do, so I can use them interchangeably when I want to test things, than it was to have one small one and one big one. Gene says, okay, I found your site, great site, going over your videos now. Yeah, and Gene, if you run into anything that's missing that you can't find, just let me know. There's a ton of videos there. Some cover power stuff, but there are some electrical ones that are particularly useful for you, and then there's probably a few that there's a few off-site ones that I'll send you to also if you run into what you need. Let's see. So monitoring. Now, this is one that I had almost immediate regrets for. So I thought, I'm going to go over here. Let me just get logged in before I do it so I can show you this. Okay, so here I'm going to flip over to this screen here. So I thought this is the EG4 website, the monitoring site. And I thought this monitoring software is just fine. It does everything I did. The problem is when you first start, you don't know what you don't know. Going from this to, let me see, to Solar Assistant, where you have this, which was my second iteration, which I don't regret this one at all. It's got great statistics, but what you see is what you get here. So then I went to Home Assistant, and I'm able to build all of these charts and graphs. I'm able to go into, turn on lights. The living room lights are on, the living room lights are off. I'm able to automate things to turn on lights, turn on, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Automatically turn on, whoops, I left the shed light on. So I can turn the shed light off. Automatically turn on hot water heater when I have excess of power and stuff like that. This happened after my initial one. My initial one is that this was all I was going to need. And this has some data, but it's very elementary. Solar Assistant was fantastic addition to it. It's like, I don't know, I think I paid $200 for the equipment and the software. You can buy the software for $50. This company is fantastic. They maintain it. They constantly have updates. They just recently came out with this dark theme. Most of the time when you see Solar Assistant, you'll see this light theme like this. So for years it was just this light theme, and they just recently came out with a dark theme. So that was an immediate addition, probably 2 months in, that allowed me really good solid monitoring. Now I link my batteries into this, my EG4 batteries, and we talked about my regrets of my batteries. They link into this, which feeds into my Home Assistant. And if I come over here, you'll see I have my EG4 batteries here, which is feeding from the Solar Assistant because they're hooked up through the RS485 comms. And my 6000 XP runs off of voltage because I also have a JK BMS battery that I DIY and built. And there's a video for that you can go out and look at also. But you can see here, I can monitor all the cells and I can monitor everything from this. But so that's one of the regrets, really a big regret that I have, is the monitoring, that I didn't get involved in it a little bit more early. But as we discussed, DIY, the solar systems are very addictive, and the more you do, the more you're going to do. And warning, if you're here, you're probably already started down that road, and you may need help. Links are included with the QR code to help with that problem. Okay. Let's get on with this. Expansion planning. This is an easy thing that I regretted. I didn't leave enough room for expansion. Fortunately, it's a DIY system, so I was able to expand it because by nature it's built that way. But I really planned on running exactly what I had and didn't think a little bit outside the box of what could possibly happen if I did have extra power, if I did have solar, and I didn't have to worry about an electric bill, and I wasn't paying for it, and it was free. How much more would I want? That's a big one in the house. That happened before I moved into the RV. I have a house with a solar system there too. And that is something that is really difficult to grasp. When you have so much electricity that it's going to get wasted because you have no more space in your battery to store it, what do you do with it? And that's a question that you have to ask yourself. Do you run a pool heater? Do you run air conditioner or dehumidifier that you wouldn't run? Do you, what do you do with that extra power? You hear it referred to as dump loads. How do you dump the loads of that extra power, and where does it go? And what are you going to do with all that power that you wouldn't normally have if you were paying for it? But because it's free, you might as well use it. So how would you use it? One of the biggest regrets I have is money wasted on all of those regrets that I have, between ordering cables twice, between not building the batteries myself the first time, between now reordering charge controllers and cable ends. How many cable lugs? And I'll take you over to Amazon and kind of show you what I mean on this one. Little things like the quality of stuff you don't understand. And I went in at one point and built a little solar system for the for the food trailer, and I made so many mistakes on it. So let's take a look at this. Let's see if I can do this. So you'll notice here that these are pure copper lugs, and the 4/0 5/16 connectors. There's 10 of them in here. That means they run $2.12 a piece. And you come over here and you got 10 pieces for 1/0, and they're, tinned copper lugs, which is good, meaning that they're pure copper with tin, meaning the marine grade style stuff. Really good. But if you just go in and you say battery lugs, you'll find kits like this where the battery kits, the lugs are, pennies on the dollar. And there's 230 lugs here for $69. And these actually don't look too bad, but you'll find a lot of these where the lugs themselves are hollowed out, and they're not made of copper, they're made of some other aluminum or something along those lines. And so copper ring terminal adopts safer close. So these are actually closed in and flared correctly. So these may not be too bad. Of course, now that I'm looking for one that I want to show you, there will all be good quality. So you can see these. These have holes here. These are not solid copper. They are, they may be copper, but they are hollowed out, and they're running in the cost of a few pennies a piece, and that's because that's all they're worth, is a few pennies a piece. They can't support the amperage that the wire that they're connected to. The number one thing, if you get nothing from this live stream today, the number one problem in a solar system, in a DIY solar system, is the connections, the lugs, and the wires. Not tightening things, not connecting them good, not having them lugged on good, not trusting screws when they're not tight. It is the number one problem. And if it hasn't happened to you yet, it will happen to you. And just remember, it's the number one problem. Check, double check, triple check all your connections. That is one of my biggest regrets and things that if I could do it all over again, I would go with 100% pure marine grade tinned pure copper lugs, and I would never use any of those cheap ones. I can't even tell you how many of them have cut off and had to replace because I cheaped out and bought inferior products like that one there, trying to save a dime on things, and all I ended up doing was paying for them twice. It's painful. So key advice: build where you're going, not where you are, because those are going to be the regrets that you have. When you build a system for just what you have today, you're going to run into the case where you want to use some power, extra power, and you don't have it. Can you load an extra power onto someone else's generator in exchange for maybe some eggs or something? Yeah. It's funny. The regulations on providing power to people is really, really kind of strange. The power generation, consider yourself a power generation company. I'm sure you could if you were two farmers and you were just trading some eggs or something to somebody. Or if you wanted to borrow somebody's generator and do it that way too. But yeah, it's kind of it's a funny thing. For some reason, the laws around sharing electric are extremely odd and very limiting. And I'm not sure I understand. I don't know the history behind it. It would be an interesting subject to go back and to investigate why the laws around there are that kind of written that way. But basically, the way I interpret them, and I haven't looked at them in close details in years, but they basically say you are not allowed to provide electricity to a company, provide electricity to anyone. Now, are those just laws that are off the, are on the books for so long now that it was because it was dangerous in the early days, or is there a legitimate reason behind it? I don't know. But transmission lines and providing electricity to someone have a lot of restrictions around them. Very odd. But I would say, just between you and me, if my neighbor needed a power, and I did it during an outage, if they needed an outlet, I would give them one. I'd run an extension cord. Yeah, power companies would be pretty touchy about anyone sharing in their electric. In Georgia, we can't get paid even if we put it back onto the grid. Wow. Now, see, I've got a net zero in my my house, and it basically is practically a 1-for-1. I put 1 watt in, I get 1 kilowatt out, which is kind of nice, I don't suspect it'll last very long, though. I suspect that the company, they'll find a way to end it, just like they've done in many other places where you give them one and you give them one, they give you a 5-cent credit, and then they charge you 15 cents to use it. Anyway, let's looking back. I would have spent more on the right parts the first time. I would have probably done a little bit more investigation, a little bit more homework, maybe even hired somebody like myself at this point. I do a lot of consultations for that today, and I probably, looking back, at probably something I would consider doing now. I did one just this morning, and that was kind of I got the sense that I was that you're doing good because you're telling them all these little hints and stuff like that. Would have planned for expansion a little bit better, planned how I was laying out my solar system instead of having to move things around every time I add something. It would have been nice if I had it really drawn out. Okay, this is what I'm going to have today. This is what I'm going to have in a year from now. This is what I think I'm going to have in a few years from now. And sometimes it's hard to see the future like that, but I certainly would try to say, okay, well, what if my consumption doubles? And what if it's 1.5 times what it is, or at least done something along those lines? What if I, get a new car and I want to be able to charge the car? Or what if I, those kind of questions I never asked myself. I said, what is my current needs? And I knew I had to replace the air conditioners in the RV because those factory air conditioners stink. And I did all those with mini splits, and that was all as far as I looked, and then I ran. If you have something in your solar system that you wish you could change, I'd love to hear about it. And if you sorry, lost my train of thought there. If you have something in your solar system that you messed up, or that you would look back and you would like to redo, I'd love to hear about it. I love hearing these things, and sometimes they spur ideas for videos for me and stuff like that. So I'm constantly looking for ideas for videos, so always your comments are welcome. I enjoy the comments more than I enjoy making the videos sometimes. So please feel free, good or bad. Be polite, but be demanding. I'm okay with that. I've linked a bunch of stuff in the where is it? Over here. I've linked a bunch of stuff in this, different solar systems, different kits and stuff like that. They're almost all affiliate links. I do make a little bit off of it. It does help me pay for a lot of the things that I build. I've got a huge number of cool upgrades to the solar shed coming. We are going to do a 24 volt upgrade. We are going to do a big 48 volt solar shed very soon. I've got a couple of inverters burning a hole in my pocket, and I'm sure there's a lot of people looking forward to that video. Anyway, these were all the wonderful things that I learned, and I wish, and I'm sure there's a dozen more that I'll think of after this. And I would love to hear yours. And hopefully I've saved you some of the pain of some of the things I went through. If you have any questions, or you have any items that you're looking to order, you want to schedule some time to go over that, feel free to go to my website. It's in the links below. I do a lot of one-on-ones to go through, walk through plans, understand what you're building. Shout out to Missy. You got your RV running. I'm really glad. I'm still looking forward to some pictures so that we can share it with the rest of the live stream here. She has got a really, really nice RV and a beautiful solar system that goes in it, and finally got it all working. A little hiccup that she had to deal with, and we finally located the problem and got it fixed. And I haven't heard from her in days and days and days, so I'm glad to hear that she's off and running and out boondocking somewhere, hopefully. And several others that I've worked with the last few days. So if you're one of them and you need some help, just let me know. Be glad to help. If it's just simple questions, just send them through email or send them in the comments, and I'll take care of them. Anyway, that is all 6 subjects for today. I can't believe I made it through all of them. I thought when I got halfway through I wasn't going to make it. I don't think there's anything I missed. I'm looking forward to going forward the new high voltage DC inverters. I know EG4's got their American-made one where they're going to actually source the batteries. If you missed this news at the beginning of the show, they're going to source their batteries here in America also, which is cool. So they're going to be building the batteries, the inverter, and everything. How much of the little components and pieces and parts will be shipped in from overseas? We know that's going to happen, but at least they've started down the path. And they started long before a lot of the trade issues and stuff happened. So good for them. EG4, you're the first one to take that step, and we will take the ride with you, and we will definitely support you when we get there. So I think that's it for the day. I think I've covered everything, and I think if you missed all the news at the very beginning, I went through all the different stuff from. I want to say thank you to Country View Solar again. He is a fellow YouTuber who covered a whole bunch of stuff from the big RE Plus convention earlier this week, from EMP certifications on all the EG4 Lux Power devices, and multi-head mini splits coming out by EG4, where you can run solar panels directly into the mini splits. They're going to have a window unit that you can do the same thing, plug your panels directly into it. That's going to be cool. And chargeverter upgrade, high voltage, 100 volt new Nova inverters. Those are going to be cool. He went by the Solarc 18K single inverter, 18K continuous power. That's a whole house in a box. That's going to be awesome. I look forward to that and seeing where that market goes. And then Bluetti. All of us mobiles people got to look forward to some Bluetti. They are creating a new power hub RV5 system that is supposedly going to have all the pieces and parts to handle multi-voltage systems, where you have 12-volt systems and 24-volt systems and 120-volt systems, and plug-in parts to charge off of your car and while you're driving, and all kinds of really cool stuff. So they're building systems specifically for us mobile people, which I'm glad to see it's happened. If you, I've got a video on how to replace your 12-volt batteries in my history. I will link it in the comments below later on, if you're interested in that. And I think that's it for me today. We've been going for quite a while. I look forward to seeing everyone again next week. I do want to do a little bit of celebration before we go, though. Gosh almighty, how awesome are you guys with support of my channel. Let's see how big we are today. How many subscribers do we have? Whoops. ST. Wow, I can't type at all. All right, so we are at, and let's hit the celebration button. We are at 12,759 subscribers. You guys are awesome. The members, you guys are fantastic. Thank you for signing up for membership. Membership gets you early access to all of my videos. I almost always post them early. I have a ton of videos in the lineup that are going to be coming out over the next couple of weeks. And if you're a member, you'll have early access to all of them. There are different levels of membership where you get different things. Some insiders views with level 2. Level 1 gets you the basic access to all the early stuff. And then level 3, you get some custom specialized videos and things like that. Most importantly, you get to help support pay for a lot of the items that I build and a lot of the videos that I make. And thank you so much. You guys are wonderful. The growth is just fantastic, and I really do say thank you. I appreciate you all. Anyway, I'm out of here. Keep charged. Build a nice DIY system and send me some pictures. I want to see pictures of people's solar systems. Come on. Email them, post them, send them somehow. Thanks for watching. You guys have a great day. We'll see you next week here at 4 o'clock on Sundays. Every week I do my live stream, and a lot of these will be reposted as videos. If you missed them, you can catch them there. Talk to you later. Thank you guys, you're awesome.
Back to the solar shed series. Today we're going to break down the solar system, the switch set-offs. Seen many times before. Got the shed prepped, got all the solar products, and a brand new, eco-worthy IC 3000 watt, 12 volt, 120 volt, 60 megahertz, 100 amp charger, ready to go. We're going to install this in the solar shed, and then we're going to test it all out. Get ready, it's going to be a fun ride, and the solar shed is going off-grid. So today we're doing things a little differently. It is hot, and I mean it's hot here in Florida today. So I've got the canopy above me, the solar shed's way in the background over there, and I'm just kind of going to start unpacking things and work here on the benches as much as possible, and then we'll transport it over there. So we're going to start with the unopening, and I want to thank EcoWorthy for sending me this new inverter. This should provide us enough power to run everything we need in the solar shed. It's also designed for RVs and even has a lot of the important pieces that you're going to need to go with it. This is one of the first pieces that I thought was really, really nice. Now, as you can see here, these wires, that's a charging wire, but these wires are not small. They did a really nice job of sending good quality battery cables. These are not underrated. The lugs are nice sized. The battery cables are nice. The finishings are nice. They did a really, really good job on these. And so that's actually really nice. They've also got some protective muffins and stuff for everything. So that's great. Then we have the actual inverter. Now, let's talk a little bit about the inverter. Get it out of the box here. It's a pretty simple packaging. There isn't anything super fancy about it, but you can see here, it's, I don't know, 25, 26 pounds. But it's not too heavy. But it's 3,000 watts, 6,000 watts of surge, and 12 volt DC, which was important because I want to build a 12 volt system for the solar shed this time. So it operates between battery
voltage rating between 10.5 volts and 16.5. So it should handle lithium batteries perfectly. Shouldn't have any problems there. 60 hertz, 120 volt AC output. Nice input frequency is input frequency. So this is the nice thing about this is it's an RV rated, mobile rated certifications here in the US and in Canada. And I will put the specs from that, run it down the screen here, out of the manual. I remember reading it, but I don't have it with me. But they include the cable for charging. So the nice thing is you can plug this into an RV. And when you pull into an RV park, your system switches over to run off of the grid. And when you pull out, it switches back. Now it has a 30 millisecond switch rate between being on the battery and being on the grid. So it's a little slow there. It could be a little bit faster. Had they got it down to 10 milliseconds, you probably wouldn't notice it on any devices. So there might be some devices, alarm clocks or things like that, that are, that reset and start over. For the most part, most items will handle 30 milliseconds okay, but you're not going to have that on every device. You're going to find that some of them are going to reset a little bit. You might see a little bit of flickering in LED lights if your LED lights aren't already running off a 12 volt directly, which in most RVs they would be. But this is marine grade, mobile grade certified. So that's the nice thing. It's not too overly heavy, but it is a 12 volt, 3000 watt, 100 amp charger. Now, keep in mind, it's only AC charging. It does not have PV charging in it. So when we get to the point where we're doing the solar setup itself, we will still need to hook up the Victron charger to take care of that part of it to hook the PV to. But that's okay. It's still a great choice for RVs because it allows you to get a marine grade charger that provides all of the bad bypass information and switches you need to run your 30 amp RV off of, and then it provides enough power that when you're off grid, you won't even know you're off grid. So it's fantastic from that perspective. Now, how it operates, that we yet to know, but we will find out. We'll do some testing on this thing and understand how it works. So going back to the specs here, it operates basically in the 10.5 to 16.5 range. It has DC output range, gel flooded, AGM, lithium battery, pure sine wave, and it is pure sine wave, which is nice because then you don't have to worry about dirty power or anything like that. So it seems to be pretty simple. Now let's talk about the connections here on the bottom. I just need to push this camera down just a little bit more so you can see it a little bit more clearly here. So as you can see here, one of the nicest features I like about it is it comes with a built-in outlet here. So if your RV or whatnot is just plugged in, you can plug it into this 20 amp AV outlet. Now with 20 amps, you're not going to be able to pull the full 3000 watts. So don't be mistaken that you can just plug your RV in here and get everything out of it. You will need to go with the input from the AC input from here. So let's find a screwdriver and let's take these covers off so that we can see how these things hook up. I'm just going to grab a couple of screwdrivers here. All right. And like I said, I apologize for the ad hocness of this today, but it being so hot outside, I just wasn't going to work out there in that sun while we did all of this. There was no reason for it. All right, so we just take this off, and I got to be careful not to drop anything in this deck here, or it just disappears. Okay, so that's not too simple. That's not too bad. Let me see if I can get you a good view of that. So basically, what this is, you can see from it, is the wires running here. It's got neutral and a line, neutral and a line. This side over here is for your AC input, and these two over here are for your AC output. So we'll be able to run an AC output. Now I've got a really cool box that we're going to use for that, so that we can show the distribution box. Now, in most cases, you'd probably run that directly to, using 8/0 wire, you could probably run that directly to your RV fuse box and have the plug run in here. So the electrical diagram that which you would want for this is that the grid plug comes in from where the RV is currently connected, comes in and goes into the AC input, connects here, and then the AC output goes from here to the breaker box in your RV. And then this acts like a switch between the two. Whether you're off grid, this turns on, and when you're on grid, you can either have yourself use the batteries and use this as a backup, or you can put it in backup mode where it charges the batteries, and then when the power goes out, it kicks in and you have full power there. So you can operate it both ways. Now, there are a couple of items here that I was a little disappointed with the CAN bus here. I thought this was going to hook up to some things, but this seems to be just a plug for their batteries. I'm going to get a little bit more details on it and worry about that. There's a programming port here for the USB, and there's a couple of things for the remote and remote screen and stuff. These here are for the connections to the battery terminals, and as you can see, these wires being beefy enough to actually support these properly, which is nice. Thank you for providing good enough sized wires to where we feel comfortable running it. These are definitely able to support the wattage that it would come through there, and as you can see, that's pretty decently done there. This will run directly down to the batteries, and there we go. Let's see if I can get that loosened. But either way, as you can see, it's quite a simple device. It only has a couple of connections, one to the battery, one to the AC in for AC charging or bypass mode, one for AC out to run your AC devices, or you can simply just run it through the wall plug here. Now, if you run it through the wall plug, this is a 20 amp plug. You will not get the full 3,000 watts out of a 20 amp plug. AC 120 at 20 amps is only 2,400 watts. So you wouldn't be able to pull everything out of this, and you probably wouldn't want to anyway. But, and you've also got a reset button there. The screen here, we'll go over that when we get it hooked up, but this is a good little device. And grounding here, they specify in the manual that on grounding on this one, that you need to pay, that this needs to be grounded to in your RV system, it should be grounded to the frame of the automobile. That's true with the boat. There is a common grounding bus bar that it goes to. And so that's where you would ground it on a boat and in the RV there. Now, one of the downsides I see here is this, it doesn't have any IP 65 ratings or anything like that. So it is strictly rated for inside use. That makes it a little bit difficult to use in some RV situations and in some, especially in some boating